Welcome, everybody. I'm really super excited. The first thing I want to do here is there's somebody that I need to thank, well both of us. If it wasn't for Ginger, Vylet, Ginger is a tremendous fan of yours, and as a matter of fact, one of the very first musical engagements I had with him when he came in and did Little Donos, we listened to your whole album on the first run. And so if it wasn't for Ginger, thank you so much for introducing us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and he's also just been a really big support of putting us together, and now here we are at the interview, or just chilling. Guys, this is Daybreaker, Nightmare Night by Vylet Pony. Let's check this out, and then after this, we'll roll into our interview. Here we go. This just hammers. God, I love your ambient work in the back there.
I love my little synth pad.
It's great though, I love it. Jeez, Vylet, this is a banger.
I wish I could scream that viscerally all the time. It's sort of 50-50 when it's
Oh my gosh, Vylet Pony in the house. That was such a smoker. What with your, I'm doing that not because I'm old, it's because I'm perplexed. I don't know where to start with asking the question about the track. First of all, incredible vocals.
Thank you so much.
You know, the journey I've been on with the heavy metal station, channel I have on YouTube as well as here on Twitch, I've been really mind-numbed with vocalists that have very clean tones, light tones, and then go into this, ball squeezing, visceral, I guess there's different words for pig squeal or the screaming kind of techniques, and still managed to be able to talk the next day. So, most of the music that I've heard of you has been some very intricate EDM work, but not a lot of this. So, before I get into we kind of rope into the interview and we talk about your beginnings and stuff, I'm just really kind of curious about this. What was the influence for this particular track?
So, fascinatingly enough, Daybreaker is a song I originally wrote in 2018 when I was 19.
Ooh.
And it actually is out and released. But the thing is like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just had like one of my dad's guitars, and I was just like, I'm just gonna make noise with this and see what happens. And what ended up happening is, I guess it turned into some sort of like garage rock thing. There wasn't a very clear direction on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the time people were like, "Oh, this is kind of crazy." But like as I got older, I got more familiar with how writing more rock music was. It was like, yeah, that thing kind of sucked really badly. Like I was just playing an open E chord the entire time. There wasn't really anything crazy happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came time to revisit it, because I was like, the core ideas, the singing was like fun for me. And so it's like, I'm going to do this, but I know a bit more about playing guitar now. I know a bit more how to produce like rock music and stuff. And so I went into it, and it kind of ended up becoming a more like, I guess it's a little bit more punk than garage rock this time around. And that's definitely after having a really big exposure and enjoyment of like a lot of like different both post-punk music from like the 80s and stuff, as well as getting into like some like J-punk stuff as well.
Well, I mean, without a doubt, the tone that it gave me, at least, or listening to it here with just a fresh, set of ears and stuff, and of course not knowing when you wrote it and did everything, it definitely fit into the model of actually what's blowing up right now. It seemed like in the different kind of chords. I'm so freaking confused with how many fucking genres there are in metal and stuff. But I figure this will be Vylet core, is what we'll call it or something. But the core aspect of it is, apparently when you put a little bit of that punch in there, that your guitar tone, and then you give it the tonal shift in your voice where you're singing clean, you get aggressive, you get a little, front loaded with the growl, and then you go deep, right, 2, 3, 4 measures of straight up screaming and stuff. So I thought the track smoked. And something else, 2 other things about that I really enjoyed. I had mentioned it while it was playing, which was the second verse. You had like the subtle ambient kind of sequence going on in the back there, and in your mix, which I find you do extraordinary, as a matter of fact, through the music I listen to, in your mix, you left really good room for that to live without it becoming an EDM post-punk kind of vibe. Just something in the back that really gave it some life. And the other thing I loved about it, as subtle as it may have been, I loved your bass line.
Thank you. I don't remember if that was a live bass or a MIDI one, because I do both interchangeably, and I have to look again. I think that one, because I just got a new bass this past year. It's a Fender Mustang bass.
Ooh, look at
that might
you.
have been what I was running on this track, possibly. I don't quite remember though.
It sounded like it could have been. Yeah, it sounded like it could have been like just like a sub pleb, kind of more of a subsonic bass. Yeah, I mean, of course you can achieve that with bass playing, but it was subtle.
Yeah.
But it was great. It was really warm on the bottom, and as far as tone mixing, in your master out, it was very well balanced. But dang, girl. That was a smoking track. That's the kind of track where I'm going to say, man, let me slice this up and put it up on the decomposer lounge is what I'm talking about.
I'd put some avocado on it.
Oh, look at you. All right, everybody in the chat. We got jokes. We're doing this. We're doing this. All right, so let's go ahead and just kind of then get us kind of a little bit at the beginning here. Now, I know that you're somewhere in your mid-20s. Let me see, when was it that you kind of felt, I mean, there's a question always about being exposed. When did the parents expose you and everything? But when was it that you felt like, I want to try to write some music? About how old were you think?
So my story always changes a little bit because I keep finding different information from my computer files, because I've kept an archive of almost all my computer files since I started using a computer. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always trying to do research to get the most accurate story here. I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to slightly contradict it. afterwards because I discovered something new. But for the most part, I was about 7 years old when I first got a hold of like GarageBand on like the family computer. We had an M1, a Korg M1 keyboard, which nowadays people would go crazy to have one of those. And I was just like, this is just some shit fucking thing that we have.
Oh my God, the M1.
One of the most beloved
Are you
keyboards
kidding?
ever. Yeah,
oh
no,
gosh.
I would love to have one now.
I had one. No, I had one. If I had a list of all the things that I've sold, not knowing what the future was going to look like, because remember, I was a composer when it was pencil and paper, so I transitioned through the Atari 1040 ST, every type of synth and MIDI, all the way through to now actually just working on a DOS. So when you say the Korg M1, I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. I used to use it to keep my door open. No, I'm sorry.
Oh my. Okay. Well, I mean, that's one use for it. It is pretty hefty. Those composer keyboards were really weighty.
Oh, and so
I really loved the
too.
round buttons on it. Oh, very expensive. Even more now.
One of those keyboards, with the cost of one of those keyboards, I mean, from the day you could buy a whole DAW now. You know what I'm saying? Loaded with modules and stuff. The world's changed. Anyhow, I digress. Forgive me. I jumped the question. So around 7 years old.
Oh yeah. So I was about 7 years old. My parents had GarageBand set up on a Mac G4 Cube laptop, I think it was, and with an M1, Korg M1 keyboard hooked up to it. And I don't remember what exactly led to it, but the computer was on. GarageBand was there. It's like, oh, you can make music in this. That's crazy. I started like fucking around with it, and it was just like something that like definitely a 7-8-year-old would do.
I found some web results.
Her roommate the roommate just walked in there and just was like, I found your underwear hanging in the closet again. What are you doing? Oh, mute.
Apparently that was my Siri. She decided to chime in for whatever reason.
Oh, that's funny. That was Siri. Okay.
This is not the first time this happened. I need to unplug her every time I stream, I think.
I'm dying. I used to say that about my ex-girlfriend, too. I used to just have to unplug her and just, I'm sorry. All right, go ahead.
And I wasn't super serious about it. I was just like, oh, I could make these like funny little sounds, and then that was it. And so fast forward a couple of years, a little bit older, and I realized like I could keep trying. It was the fascinating thing. And I've been listening to more music. I've been exposed to more music. And so I started trying to do something a little bit more structured, a little bit more serious. I had an alias. I called myself Dark Phoenix, except Phoenix was spelled incorrectly. Not on purpose. I just didn't know how to spell the word Phoenix. And I was basically early attempts at making like what I thought was trying to be progressive rock music, because that's what I grew up on. That was my first love, my first interest musically. Ooh. Really, it sounded more like, I guess you would say dungeon synth music, though. Is what it ended up sounding like.
And so, briefly, now you said that as you were starting to progress, you're playing around with the GarageBand a little bit. I got to circle back and kind of drill down a little bit on. You said that prog.
Yes.
Was a very big. I'm sure it always is going to be an influence because it's always so creative. What were some of the bands that you remember listening to when you were younger that were proggy?
Well, it started off not as prog as it could have been. The first technically the first. This is not prog, but like the first artist I remember listening to and like caring about was Bruce Springsteen. That was like where my music journey sort of started, is hearing Bruce Springsteen for the first time. That was my first concert. 9 years old. I was in the front pit at the very front. I was spoiled rotten to have that as a 9-year-old.
Nice.
But after that, I heard Bohemian Rhapsody on the radio, and I was like, what the hell is this? I didn't say that when I was like 7, but I was like, what the hell is this? And my parents thought, oh, this is like Queen. I think you'd like them. like, because I had been listening to Muse, the band Muse. This was back when they were a little bit more formidable than they are now, I think.
Sure.
And they're like, well, if you like that stuff off of The Resistance, off of Black Holes Revelations, you'd certainly like this Queen stuff. And I loved Bohemian Rhapsody and I loved Queen, but what really drove me was hearing Queen 2, which is an album most people outside of like their fan base, I guess you would say, haven't really interfaced with, listened to. It's progressive rock. It's like it's operatic. It's rock opera stuff, and it's very like Baroque influence, very Baroque pop stuff, and that spoke to me a ton. And that was the like gateway drug to me being able to realize Genesis existed, and that was like the nail in the coffin. Is I remember my dad started playing One for the Vine from Wind and Wuthering in the truck one day, and I was like, oh my god, I recognize this. What is this? He's like, yeah, I used to play this all the time when you were like 3. And I was like, oh my god, I need more of this. And over the next year or two, I became a Genesis mega fan. I eventually ended up, and I still have them, the entire box set of all of their records on CD. Each individual box goes for like $500 on eBay now.
Oh my gosh. Deep roots on your influence, though. You're talking about Genesis and Queen, you know, for a young artist such as yourself. What are we talking? I'm doing a little bit of math here. Are we talking like 2005 you're being exposed to this? 2006?
Between the years of 2005 and 2008.
Wow. And for me, that's just a trip because, you know, those were bands that influenced me, you know, since I was born in the 1900s. You know, those are also bands that were very high on my influential, like, what the fuck is this? And what are they doing?
Yeah.
And how are they doing this? I need to take another hit and investigate this. You know, to know that you were exposed to that, which I think also is kind of a genesis for a lot of, no pun, for a lot of artists is when they, excuse me, when they talk about how their parents, what their parents were playing around the house, really influenced, even if it was subliminally. Hang on, I got to cough for a second. I can mute my mic for a second. Watch, here comes all the old man emotes, but stand.
No worries.
Sorry, and no, I wasn't taking a hit for all my subs out there that are always accusing me of vaping or something. I don't know. So I just think it's extraordinary that, you know, some of the music that really got you churned up and really wanted you to move forward were actually same influential bands of mine. So that's really super cool beans. What other ones do you remember were influences at that point?
Well, there was obviously like stuff like Yes, of course, which I didn't get super into, but I've listened to enough back when I was younger that that was a part of it. Not prog, but like I listened to The Who quite a bit. I mean, Quadrophenia, rock opera stuff was definitely an influence on my earlier life quite a bit as well. I think another one, which I get a lot of comparisons to, and rightfully so because I am very influenced by them, was modern stuff like Mars Volta. People talk about that a lot in context with Monarch, and it's like, yeah, guilty as charged, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mars Volta is also extremely eclectic and abstract in their compositions, you know, and really takes their, you know, that Mars Volta is kind of like a group that is not writing it in it to a minute for a minute type song construction for radio. You know, it's like 3.5 minute songs. No, these guys are taking you on a journey, and you know, they don't give a fuck how long any of this is because they're not worried about the old school way of thinking of like, oh, we've got to write our radio hit and our single, and you know, and radio now is nothing more but Morse code, you know, to the music industry pretty much. So nobody's really producing content necessarily, you know, for the specs of radio, which was back in the old days. You know,
right.
The radio programmer had to get X amount of songs in and make sure that there was at least out of the hour a good 18 minutes for advertisements to roll in. So, you know, you can get X amount of songs in a 1 hour, you know, clock period. But all that being said, Mars Volta, yes, I could see the comparison with some of the music of yours that I've heard in Mars Volta. So that's pretty super sick. Now at that point, you're starting to get a little more influenced with bands. How are you at that point growing with your recording or your songwriting journey?
Well, I found that I had no fucking clue what I was doing and couldn't make anything remotely close to my favorite bands at that time. Now, I was like, 9, 10, 11. It's like, of course I can't, sure. But it was frustrating me a lot. And it was really like confusing me because I would study this music and I didn't quite understand what made it tick. And so I did make some records just for myself, never released anywhere, that never really did anything for me or for any listener. I didn't really share it with people, so it was just like I was just trying stuff out. And again, it really just ended up sounding like dungeon synth. I was really like somehow very focused on the ambient aleatoric aspects of progressive rock music, and all my instruments were just cheap MIDI instruments, so it just ended up sounding like that.
So you're saying you had the Square was your computer that you were using with GarageBand, and did you have like a MIDI port that you connected to that, and you had actual physical MIDI synths, or did you already dive into plugins at that point?
I think there was some MIDI thing my dad had done with the M1 in the computer, because I remember being able to play GarageBand with the M1 as a controller. So I don't remember the technical like aspect of it, because I never got a chance to study that at like a more conscious age, I think.
Well, I think that's really cool though that you had Dad in your corner, to help you along with this. I take it that he was very supportive of you, spending time writing music and enjoying yourself that way, correct?
Slightly. He would claim himself that he didn't really do much. He was sort of just like put stuff around, and I just would like worm my way into it. I have a lot of difficulty remembering a lot about my parents because we've been cut off for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, I still think about like the influences and stuff, and I definitely wouldn't have picked up music as quickly without my parents just like leaving instruments and stuff around, but everyone was musically inclined.
When was it in your life that you said, you know what, I'm going to try to just write and arrange enough music to release like an EP, a project? When did that happen?
Well, that comes to like the missing link for all of this stuff. And one of the biggest struggles up to the year about 2011, 2012 was a lot of the media I was consuming was pretty much all like pre-approved by like my parents, that type of stuff. There wasn't like a hard rule, a hard limit. Like if I was listening to something else, I wouldn't get like chastised for it, but they made it very difficult for me to reach outside of their influence in media. And I was also scared of like going further out and stuff.
So you're saying you're saying they kind of gate kept your access to social media and stuff?
Absolutely, and definitely religious. I grew up a Christian, but as I got a little bit older, entered middle school, I started to hear more of what my classmates were listening to, and there was this internal conflict. I was hearing this stuff and I was like, oh, I love this, but I have to pretend I hate it.
Wow.
The big one was Kesha. I heard Kesha for the first time and my mind exploded. I was like, this is really incredible and I have to pretend I hate it or else my parents will like excommunicate me or whatever. And so a lot of this stuff I would listen to, this like pop top 40 stuff. I would listen to like Kesha, Rihanna, Taylor Swift. I got really obsessed with, but I had to be super quiet about it. But it's in itself a gateway drug because I started to explore a little bit. I started to like go out of my parents' defined comfort zone. And that's when I heard Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites by Skrillex.
Boy, that's a wake-up call.
I was in the 7th grade classroom in my middle school with my teacher, Harper. My parents wouldn't pick me up until like 3 hours after school, so there was like an after-school program that we did. And So sometimes we'd be in the classrooms and there was like one of the homeroom teachers, Harper, who was like the coolest guy ever, coolest teacher I've ever had. Major influence. I wrote a song about him on Cutie Marks, my other 2121 album.
Mhm.
And he was playing this thing that I couldn't describe what I was listening to. And I ended up asking him, what was that you were playing? And he was like, oh, it's Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites by Skrillex. And I said, wow, it sucks.
What?
And I went home that night hearing the song in my head over and over and over and over and over again. And I started to look up stuff about it, and really, I loved it. I loved that song so much, but I was like really intimidated by how much I liked it. And I remember looking it up and doing some research, and I remember a couple of days later, I went to my dad. He was like driving me home from school, and I said, Dad, you ever heard of dubstep? It's like, no, not really. I said, well, it's like the metal of pop music type shit. I was like trying to like appeal to the distaste that my parents had for pop music.
Sure.
And then a few days later, I pirated the song Scary Monsters and Nice Sprites and listened to it on loop like 200 times. And
Wow.
that's when I was like, I didn't know music could sound like this, and I want to do this. And within a year's time, I started learning electronic music production. And I got into all these other electronic artists, and I was like, this is the thing I needed to like motivate me to do something. This is so weird and experimental and exciting to me in a way that like my older influences weren't quite allowing me to learn from just yet.
Mhm.
And so it was like weirdly accessible.
I think that's an extraordinary part of your path, is having to kind of dodge, and I find this to be something kind of consistent in all the years that I've been just kind of doing my thing in the music industry, and the people I've talked to, is that, not letting the parents know that you're doing this or you're doing that or what's going on here, because you don't want them to get angry when it comes to music, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And other things, other walks in life as well, as a matter of fact. But in general, that sneaking around that you had to do is kind of, I find that there's a little bit of that story in quite a few artists to start off when they're young, because it was like, what are you listening to? What is that crap? I can't believe it. My days we used to listen, and it becomes that. Or in your case, because of, I believe it was a little bit of a stringent religious environment that you were living in, that there was a very conservative playlist, let's say, and therefore you had to kind of, like you said, once you got into middle school, or in that time when you were like going, oh my God, what's this? What are they listening to? This is cool. And then the teacher turns. I think that's even more badass, is that the teacher turns you onto that. I think it's funny when you said it sucks. I was like going in a kind of a Primus kind of way, because that's one of their things, right? Primus sucks, but I mean, it's an accolade, kind of a thing.
Yes, no, because it was actually just, I loved it so much that I was in the most denial I think I've ever experienced in my life. Type stuff.
I love that.
So I had to like,
must fight urge, must not like this. Oh, losing. Oh,
it was literally like that.
Oh my gosh.
But what made it such a good entry into music was, unlike how gatekeepy, like a lot of like, I don't want to say traditional, because it's not really traditional, but like I'll just say it, like traditional, like rock arrangements and stuff. Like rock music is very like gate kept from new artists. Like you have to go through lots of like classes and like training, and a lot of the time it's like very difficult to get started. Whereas electronic music, people are constantly sharing resources. It's acceptable to like learn to do stuff by using like more pre-made like samples and stuff. And of course, once you start graduating and becoming like a much more prolific artist, you learn to like create all these sounds from scratch and like do this stuff fully from your own like know-how. But to start out, there's so many resources that so many people could like just start making music on their like fucking laptop. That level of entry was really important to me. I found this website called Looperman, where people would just upload their loops that they made or pirated from elsewhere, and put it on this website for anyone to use. And that was an indispensable resource for like the first year or two of learning music production. And I haven't really downloaded anything from there since I was like maybe 15 or 16, but I still have everything I downloaded from there, and I still pull from it from time to time.
That's great. I think that's phenomenal. I think one of the unique things that, it's a tug of war for me in the sense that, like I said, I hate to admit it, but in my Obi-Wan Khajiit kind of age, the only way you got demos done and stuff, it's pencil to paper, hire musicians, go into a recording studio, and then in the, mid to late 70s, you can build your own little 8-track or something, and the MIDI came around, the Atari 1040 SG, and, the trajectory of technology really is what made me the composer that I am, because I was too lazy or too high to want to, write music and then do that whole path. But then when it became slightly easier, it motivated me to say, oh, all I got to do is this, and samplers came out, etc. Fast forward to where we are now, I find that even though some musicians and producers that I find, when they post on YouTube about, oh, it's really easy now, all you got to do is do this, and now everybody drops in a loop and does this, and then they release a piece of music, and then it just seems like a little bitter beato, as I like to call it. Sorry, here comes all the emotes. Watch it, but where I find it to be exhilarating that you or anybody, any young person, could actually buy a laptop, get a decent DAW, whatever it is, whatever it may be. It could be Reason, it could be Ableton, it could be, Pro Tools, I don't care, a startup kit, and then have a great array of loops and stuff to just start assembling and start kind of like marinating and being very creative without having to necessarily have the musical inclination on how to play the piano that way. Just start the process of being creative. I think I'm that guy. I'm the guy that says, look, yeah, sure, if you want to learn theory and stuff, I'm not an anti-theory person, but I have never, ever once in my life as a composer leaned on anything that would have been like, how should I write this cue for this movie? Let me see what theory would say about these chord changes. No, I always wrote from my heart. I wrote from my heart. I wrote from, my head and be persuaded by whatever strain of buds I might be on at the time. But at that point, I did lean into loops and the things we were talking about, which takes me to a nice little a question I have for you. I heard in an interview that you did that you were kind of up against like, should I create my own stuff, or do I take sample and tweak it enough to make it unique, or is it okay to just drop it in and use it and maneuver it and stuff? I found that to be really fascinating because I always held myself hostage to that same thing.
Right, and I occasionally still get stuck in that because nowadays I can make everything from scratch very, very easily. I've become very well educated in sound design, lots of great resources, lots of friends who have taught me stuff over the years. And like starting from when I first started making music with like loops and samples, I'd basically be arranging a song and being like, okay, I've made this. I wonder how this sound is made, or I wonder how this thing is done, or what makes this composition work. And slowly I'd like deconstruct the things I was making with loops and samples and learning how to do each individual part itself. Fast forward to a few years ago, and I would say pretty proficient at doing stuff super originally, super like from the ground up, scratch everything, all my own sound design, all my own everything. And what I realized is that when you're a solo artist, when you're just your own person doing something, not in a band, not in a group or anything, and you're isolated entirely to your own thoughts and ideas, even if you can execute these things really well, you lose that touch of like collaborative feeling. And I tend to be a little bit nervous and anxious about interacting with other musicians, and so like I've learned that not only does using stuff that you haven't fully done from scratch helps establish a more collaborative aspect to your music, because music is always collaborative because we're always building on the previous ideas that came before us, but it also gets you to hear stuff that you wouldn't do yourself anyway, and you get locked into these like production cycles of doing the same things over and over again, and you don't leave those without exposing yourself to something new, and including those things you're exposed to in your own work. I feel like adds a lot more vibrancy.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I mean, one of the things we were talking about, that old Korg, the M1. One of the things, at least, pre-digital. When I mean that, I'm talking about Pro Tools and mods and stuff. The thing is we would go out and buy synths based on the stock sounds that were in there, because the actual build it from the bottom up, you know, that wasn't the marketing of the synths that came from the Ensonics to the Rolands to the Korgs to everything that came out. Sure, you had ways of tweaking things. I mean, when my dad brought home the very first DX7 back in 19.
Oh, the beloved DX7.
Yes, you know, and we're sitting there, we're looking at the algorithm patch. Remember, I don't know if you remember, but on the top there was an algorithm path. Oh, if you want to change this, the LFO is here, and you got to do this. And I'm like, we're all going, blah, 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 blah. Forget about it.
Yeah, the FM matrix operators and carriers and such.
Exactly. But I mean, truth be told, every time a new series of synths came out, you could see it reflected in music that was being released. You know, you're automatically going, oh, check it out, they're using that bass from the DX7. Oh, check it out, they're using the electric piano here from the DX7. Oh, check it out, they're using those really crappy horns. You know, check it out, they're using the sample hits from the Ensoniq 1. You know, so we didn't really dive into that. There were always people that were very eclectic and started with, you know, a sine wave or something, or square wave, and built it out. But I do believe that when you had said sometimes just grabbing a sound that exists, maybe something that you may have not have created on your own, was kind of the accelerator for me, because I'd pick up a synth and I go, yeah, these are nice patches, but then I'd hear one patch, I'd go, this is worth the $2,000.
Yeah, the sound designers for a lot of these synthesizers are like, I need to dissect their brains so badly, because no matter how good I get at synthesis, I just do not understand how. It's one thing to carry out an idea, it's another thing to have the idea. Yes. If you hear something, you're like, I know how to make that, but you can't always hear something and be like, I know how to come up with that.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between conceptualization and execution. And that alone is so worth learning from by using other things. And like I was saying about earlier, with how resource intensive electronic musicians used to or have been, there was also the counterpart of when I was learning how. This is not so much something that exists anymore in the general production space, but when I was learning how to make music, people were very elitist about stuff like, oh, don't use this many presets, don't use this many samples, or else like blah 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 blah.
Were elitist? They still are. I'm sorry, that's the old man
barking. They totally still are, but I hear these arguments a lot less now, at least in the electronic music space. I think people have realized the flaws in these arguments quite intensely, and also everyone has partaken in the things that they argued against anyway. So
yeah, at one point or another, you're right. They have. They're just kind of like. They're mad at themselves for doing it at one point, so they're going to, you know, bang on other people's creativity by saying, well, you did this and that doesn't really count. Exactly. You know, or something like that. And to me, I don't care. At the end of the day, we're writing the music that we want, how we're influenced, by what is for us, you know, to be creative of. And then I have to admit, as we talked about earlier, because of my old career as a composer for libraries and stuff, my job was I had to write so fast when I would catch an order. You know, they would give me 30 days to write 10 tracks in specific ways, like 10 or maybe 3 different styles, 3 tracks each style. I'd have to write so fast, I'd go, oh crap, I need to get this. Okay, let me get this. I'm going to slide this in here. I'm going to change this a little bit. Maybe I'll put in a custom hi-hat. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this. So for me as a music library composer, that accessibility to sounds for me to kind of like grab and drop it in and then work it out. And then once I get the template out or the mock-up, then I'd go back in and say, let me tweak this, let me do this, I'll add a bigger reverb to this, let me slope down this and just kind of make certain tweaks and then export it, deliver it onto the next track, you know. And you know, that for me, that was just that was in my elbow. So I didn't spend a lot of time, you know, really creating a lot of very unique sounds. But I have found out that during this journey of the last 10 years that there are a lot of bands and artists and stuff like that still kind of go to that sample library that you were talking about, or maybe buy sample libraries and then go in and then they tweak it to their needs, you know. And I still find that to be just as fascinating. Just because you started with a let's just say a stock sound, you know, you tweak it, you make it yours, you know.
I think there's also this counterpart of because I do a lot of sound design engineering with stuff, either sounds I make or sounds I don't make. I'm still like working very intensely to shape them to my needs, but I think that there is this thing that exists where people are scared of using a sound or an idea that people recognize. I remember this is an interesting thing. It's still a huge in joke in the electronic production space where there's a type of compressor called OTT. Anyone in chat who knows what OTT is, it's a whole moment where there will be times where you use it's like a compressor, like a utility compressor, where if you use it, people will be like, so and so is using OTT on the song. That's crazy. Or it's like people who feel the need to like point out what's happening in each song and like make some sort of reference. And this is very intense with like sounds and ideas that are like super recognizable. And for a while, it really affected me. Like, oh, I can't let that happen. I have to be as original as possible. And then there was a point where I snapped, and it came with a lot of like self-introspection and like realizing that a lot of this comes from more unhealthy like self-criticism, where actually none of that ever really matters. And I think that being able to put something in my music that people will recognize, and to say music is not something that any single one of us invented, and right now I'm participating in a long-standing oral tradition of being able to include, you know, stuff that we've all done together in one space. I think that's like really important I want people to recognize stuff I've included, because this whole music as a concept is collaborative. No matter what you do, we didn't invent chord progressions. We didn't invent drums. We didn't invent instruments. The people who invented those instruments, through traditions, through communities, and all these things, they did that. We're building off of ideas constantly. And like the idea of just having a sound people recognize from something I love is super exciting to me, because it's like, this music thing isn't just about me. It's about all of us. And I love that so much.
And, you know, and that's the hill to die on. You know, as far as I'm concerned, that was a very tremendous statement that you made there. That whole last couple of minutes there was very profound. And I love the fact that where you are in your career and your articulation of it, to me, is very exciting, because for as long as I'm alive and I follow all the things that you release in the years coming up, to know where the basis and the roots of your creativity and the feelings of that'll be, applied into your, what you're working on now and your future works is really, really, really super cool to hear as an old fart. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
So, what is, when you are composing, are you at a keyboard, a guitar? Tell me a little bit about the instrument that you like to work on the most, and then your trajectory of becoming good at that instrument, or well enough where you feel comfortable to, play.
Well, I actually started playing drums as an infant. My gift for my second birthday was a full-ass drum set. So that was the instrument I was the most intimately familiar with for a while. But then once I started producing music, piano was like my beast of burden. I wasn't anticipating becoming a piano player. It's just like a lot of things are a lot easier to do just playing it rather than putting in MIDI. I'm not a huge fan of spending a lot of time editing MIDI. If I can play it, then that's just thank God. And so I just inadvertently became a piano player by necessity. And that had been the main thing for pretty much since I was like maybe 8 or 9. I've only recently gotten into guitar a little bit. I'm not a good guitar player. I probably never will be. But the important thing for me is I can do enough on it that I can write the music I want to write with it. And that's like exciting enough for me. I'm like probably really shit at guitar, but I love playing it anyway, and that's like so cool.
Well, it's endearing to hear you say that, because I think all of us feel that, at some point, we suck at the instruments we play, but when you said I play well enough to get the parts out that I want, I fully understand that, because I can play quite a few instruments, but I'm really not good at any of them. I've told the chat this before, and there's a part of me that has that imposter syndrome, because what I'll do is, okay, let's say I've got to put down some kind of shred guitar thing. I mean, I have after all these years. I mean, I do have some dexterity and skill set, but I can't tell you how long it takes me to punch in sometimes just maybe a 2-bar phrase that includes a sweep or something, or even as simple as just, only 5 years ago, I was exposed to the hardcore riffage of metalcore and stuff, and all of a sudden say, "Hey, this is really fun. I think I'll try this." And I go, "I can't get it. I can't do it." And I've had to sit there and just do 4 measures and just go, "Oh man, I'm going to have to nudge this, and that sucks. Let me play it again." And then of course, I don't want to nudge it. I want to get it right. So
right.
I can't. If somebody was to ask me right now, "Hey, Jeebs, can you come and play guitar in the band?" I'd be like, or can you play the bass? I'd be, or can you play the piano? I'd go, because I don't feel like I'm truly a musician to any one instrument as much as it is. I hear what's in my head. I need to get it out into the DAW, and I have my keyboard in front of me, and I will practice, and that's what I'll do. I'll just practice the part I need. I hit it, and then I walk away and I go surfing, So, I mean... to hear that you...
I think that's pretty common for, like, the solo producer, the solo composer.
Yeah.
I hear this a lot from a lot of different artists, I think.
Yeah, and you would know more than that than I would, because I'm really truly, outside of the fact that these channels showed up in my life a few years ago, and I've gotten knee deep into listening to music with people. Beforehand, I was so disassociated with, especially living here in Hawaii, when we do have... a lot of musicians out here and the record companies, and that really deal also as well as not only international music, but, local music and stuff like that. But I would not know when I left the Hollywood show in like 2000, I literally left that all behind, after LimeWire was doing what it was doing. I read the writing on the walls and going, I'm out of here. I'm going to go get me some sun. But I never really, you definitely have quite a circle, I'm sure, of artists and producers and musicians that you talk to, and to hear that at least that you and I aren't the only ones, it's kind of like commiserating, when you finally let it out of the box, you go, "Oh, you mean you do that too? Okay, I do that too. So it's okay. Yeah. It's kind of cool we do that." So at least if you're saying it's something that it still exists in the creative community, I don't feel that bad.
Well, I come from a position of, I don't even like calling it nihilism, but for the sake of specificity, I come from a place of like optimistic nihilism, and that it's like nothing matters. Where
Isn't that a
you don't have to
contradiction?
let anything define you.
Isn't that a
You get
contradiction?
to decide what's like cool to you.
Okay, I like that. Okay, good. I was like, God, optimistic nihilism.
I'm so not a nihilist, but it's sort of just like the nothing matters. So like shape everything to your interest.
Mm-hmm,
Everything can be like, from your perspective, shaped to be important.
Yeah, that's
absurdism. That might be more accurate.
Yeah, I'm on his. He's an intellectual, so he comes up with the really cool. Yes, absurdism. I like that. So piano is your thing now. So let's kind of, I'm doing our interview kind of like drunken history. I'm all over the place, so I apologize for that.
No, this is because it's more conversational that way. This is like the nature of conversation.
Yeah, true that.
It's more human.
So now I'm talking to the Vylet now, very present day and everything. What is your setup? What are you using to write with right now?
So right now in front of me, I have, and I do not recommend this keyboard, by the way, but I have a 49 SL Mark III by Novation. It's just a 49 key MIDI keyboard. I don't recommend it because this thing broke on me pretty quickly. The mod wheel doesn't work properly. A lot of the buttons just don't fucking work, and it also has a lot of features I don't need. Novation products are like pretty reasonable by default, but just like this thing is so overkill. And it's not like I can return it. I don't feel like selling it, and it's like heavy, so I'm just like keeping it here. But yeah, Novation 49 SL Mark III keyboard. To my left, I have an Ableton Push 3 controller, which is what I used to do my performance in San Francisco just last month.
I saw that, by the way.
Thank you.
Was that the one that's online right now?
Yes, it should be. That was my first performance in 5.5 years.
That looked really fun, though. That's when I edit this and post it up on YouTube, I'm going to include that link in there so people could see you in performance. So you have the little controller next to you. What else you got?
The microphone I'm using is a Shure SM7B, I think. I think that's what this is. Pretty basic, like podcast microphone. Type stuff, but I know how to mix it, so that's.
Wait a second. Are you using that microphone for your vocals as well?
Yeah, this is the one I'm speaking to you through, the one I record with.
No, really? How cool is that?
I mean, I have a pretty small room. It's like everything is just kind of in one place.
Bro, come on. We all started off in really small rooms, trust me.
I kind of like it that way, though. Everything's just here. I'm kind of scared of like large studios. I could do it. If you put me in front of like a console, some compressors, some EQs, I could probably work with it. It's just like, I'm tired. I have a lot of other instruments, but they don't really make it into the rotation unless I'm doing something very specific with them, but I can list them. Over on the side to me, I have a Roland SP404 sampler. Don't use this too much because it's got a bit of a learning curve, but I do still love it. I have 3 Electron boxes. The one next to me is the Electron Digitact. I also have the Electron Digitone and Syntact. I have an oddity, what was it called? It was a tracker of some kind. I forget what it was called. But I have like a tracker synth. I don't really use it, but it's quite sweet. And I do have some guitars.
Well, and so you have all the tools of the trade, and then what is the DAW that you're working in? What's your workstation? Is it, if I recall, I think in the interview, I don't know how long that interview was. You're using Ableton, correct?
Yes, I am using Ableton. I actually released my first. Was it my first one only? My first album was done entirely in GarageBand still. Ooh. I only switched to Ableton in 2014. Wow. So, I've tried other DAWs. In fact, on my album Carousel, the song Future was made entirely in Bitwig as an experiment. So I do mess around with other DAWs. Oh, and my record Paradise Valley, I did some FL Studio stuff with that. I just like getting in there and just seeing how those tick too. But Ableton is like kind of my home.
Now, would you say that like Ableton and some of the software you're talking about, is that more leaning into producers that are into the EDM and the subgenres of EDM? Is it simple for that?
I would say Ableton. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say not simple in the lesser than, but is it more accessible, easier to use for EDM producers than, let's say, Pro Tools or Cubase or anything of that nature?
Well, I'm like the most like anti Pro Tools character in the universe.
Okay.
I heard nothing but Pro Tools about the evils of Pro Tools as a child. And then I got older and saw Pro Tools, and interface was a little bit like, yeah, this is evil. But I would say Ableton is kind of in the middle. It's not too complex and not too simple. Ableton, I think, was more geared towards like more obscure electronic musicians at first. And then slowly it's become quite standard for old sorts of musicians. Mm-hmm. There isn't totally a stereotype for Ableton anymore, whereas there sort of used to be. Because a lot of people make music in Ableton now. Like, of all genres and all spaces. I mean, fucking a lot of, like, bands, traditional style rock bands, are running Ableton as, like, their like, controlling surface for their shows and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. That's something that I only get to experience as a listener, which I'm really glad when I see artists such as yourself on stage using different controllers or systems to for live shows and stuff like that. I find it fascinating. I think it's super cool. One of the things I want to do now, I had mentioned earlier that Ginger was the one that brought us together, and he actually dropped a couple questions. I said, let me ask her some questions that you have. So I'm going to start with one that I find very intriguing here. This is funny. We start with a funny one. Do you have a cheesy or unexpected instrument you secretly love?
Well, here's the thing is, I think I tend to avoid thinking fully, authentically, as things as like cheesy or silly or anything. I think there's like beauty in even the silliest, smallest thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I could answer that question fully authentically. But if I play into it a little bit, I would say I still, no matter how associated it is with like bedroom pop, lo-fi stuff, I still have a great love for the melodica. It is a perfect sound, and it's so small, it's so portable, and I'm even using it at like the like emotional height of the record I'm working on right now. And I don't think people will hear that and be like, oh, that's a little plastic melodica. I think people will just feel what it's doing in the song.
Yeah, I have the same challenge with my kazoo. Which is funny because I have used kazoo in the back here. Oh, that was a great answer. I like that. I like how you answered that with like every instrument has its own, respect creds. That they're what is cheesy. That's defined by somebody who's in the sense of like I wouldn't know how to I guess the kazoo would be my cheesy answer to that. I like the way you approach that.
I would stop you there too, because there is a versatility the kazoo could have because it's based entirely on your voice, which is like the most versatile instrument there is.
So absolutely correct. I've actually talked to the chat about that before without getting all, Obi-Wan Kajibski. The fact that every time we talk, we always talk in a melody. And we are always very musical, and therefore something like the kazoo would be something that even with kids, I used to teach kids music in like community housing areas and stuff like that. And I'd use the kazoo and actually break them away from being shy to express themselves. Because in general, everybody sounds like shit with the kazoo. But if I can get them to just actually get the breath through the kazoo when they make a tone, they feel that they can be creative. No one's going to judge them by it because the instrument doesn't necessarily sound so great in the first place. So to me, I would use the kazoo as a gateway instrument for kids who are having difficult times, feeling like they fit in or something like that. And it seemed to work, so.
I think that's really brilliant, especially because if you come from a perspective of saying, oh, this is just fun, this is just, have a little laugh about it, that becomes inspiration still, because you always feel something. And I think that's one of the advantages of like comedy, as everyone knows this, but it's like comedy opens you up because everyone can, interface with that in their own particular ways. And it's easier to do casually and communally. And once you're opened up, then you have this opportunity to learn something new about yourself and the world around you, because you're not as closed off as you were 10 minutes ago.
Very well said. I couldn't have even let that kind of a stream of consciousness process the way you said it. That was very well said.
Thank you.
Here's another one here from Ginger. What's one plugin, synth, or instrument you think more artists should use?
Oh, that is a good question, because this is such a widely discussed topic that it feels like it's hard to find a plugin that's like truly obscure. But if I had to say anything, I would say anything by Aberrant DSP. Fucking shout out to Aberrant DSP. Every single plugin they make is great. It's lightweight. They're not super popular. They're sort of only known by like the people who really power use plugins, I think. Their plugin Sketch Cassette is one of the kings of my plugin collection, because you have all these companies out here trying to make their own like tape plugin simulation things. Those things are going to run you $100, $200. Aberrant DSP is out here giving you maybe the best cassette simulator for $20 with a nice hand-drawn UI. Aberrant DSP gets all my love for the rest of my life.
God, you are committed. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to cut this section out. I'm sending it to their marketing division. And I'm going to put this, I'm going to title tag the hell out of it just for you. I think that's wonderful that you're behind that. I got another one here from Ginger. And then what I'm going to do is then I'm going to open it up to the chat, just a couple questions. And then after that, I just want to close briefly with, what are you working on now and that sort of stuff. So let's see. I have one more from Ginger here. Which one shall I use? I like this one. Your music often feels like a mix of organic and synthetic textures. What instruments, physical or digital, are central to your workflow? Is there one you consider your voice?
Well, per my voice.
Yeah, right. Of course, per your voice. Yeah.
Oh, if we're borrowing that though, like piano, because it's just like that is the thing that comes to me the most naturally. And whenever I'm writing music, it's usually just like either that's how I start writing it, is by inputting chords through playing piano, or piano sounds, because piano is like such a timeless, perfect instrument. It sounds like strings, it sounds like percussion, it sounds like it has every tone you would want in most situations.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good. The piano is a really good mock-up instrument to start working on. Considering too that a lot of what we do as composers and arrangers, with the DAW environment has to do with playing. You have to play it on the piano. It loads up in MIDI, and then you make adjustments to it or anything like that. But and let me see. I got one more from him. Oh, this is. Did I ask this one? No, I don't think I asked this one. What instrument or technology are you itching to explore next? Okay, good.
Then I get into a bucket list. So I have to be really consistent, and concise with this. I think if I had enough room, if I had enough money, if I had enough motivation, I would love to have a physical Prophet 5 synthesizer.
I'm not kidding.
I mean, Tony Banks, Genesis. That's
Oh my God! The only reason why I laugh like that is because my uncle's studio back in the 1900s, he had two of them, but then he also had the OB8 and the regional Oberheim and Moogs from the 70. Oh, you'd lose your mind with that, considering that you're look at you, you're like frothing right now.
Yeah.
And
what's funny is like, I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh, you gotta like have all the analog synthesizers to sound this way. Like, the computer is really fucking accurate now. It's not really about that. It's the tangibility that inspires you. It's like, you can get that sound on a computer, but again, execution versus conceptualization. Will you arrive at that sound on a computer? Because when you're touching knobs to get buttons and like you're able to work with these things physically, you think differently. Yeah. And it's just a beautiful synthesizer. The fucking wood, like,
right?
It's so pristinely done every single time on those things.
It's so
outclasses everybody.
And who would have known too? I mean, it's one of those things when you sit there, you just don't realize that our instruments are, we have them, we're using them in the present moment. Then you put them in the closet, and then you go, oh, this isn't worth anything. They stay there. My stepmother, I can't believe she did this. After my father passed away, she went through the studio, started clearing out stuff. She sold my ESQ1, the guitar, piano, synth.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh my God! I went into labor. I got all dilated and was like,
oh, that's great. Oh, that's a heavy burden.
Oh my gosh, all that stuff. But we still had the JP8, and my dad still had the original Lindrum. And the TR-808.
Oh my God, the Lindrum! No way.
You remember that?
Oh,
yeah,
that's fire. That's fire.
You and I are geeks about that stuff because. And then I thought I was badass, and I went to the SP1200, which was.
Oh my God! I fucking recently. I think it was like some company put out a simulation of it, and I bought it, and then found out that their like licensing system is like dog shit. That's the things that people don't talk about plugins enough. Is that DSP licensing is shit. The companies I usually prop up the most are the ones that are the most like customer friendly and don't do shit like that. Yeah, it was a run though
too, because remember we had back in the day we had a limited amount of vendors that were making products for us. If it wasn't a Roland, it's a Korg. If not that, it's Kurzweiler. If it wasn't that, Ensoniq jumped in for a minute. Of course, sequential circuits. They were doing their thing. And then Roland was the one that kind of leaded it off. They came up with the S50, the D50, and then the 550, the module versions.
Oh, Korgs. The D50.
Oh my God, I had two of those, and I had two D550s in my rig, and everything. It was hilarious. And
that is crack. That is a cracked setup.
Oh, it was mental. I had the best time ever doing all that sort of stuff, and also, at that point, I'm in MIDI cable hell. You know what I'm saying? Everything is all stretched out.
No, of course.
But it's good fun when I look at the cobwebs that I spun with MIDI cable, back in the day, connecting all that. It's very. I think it's. I feel kind of like, oh, she knows. Like I feel like like it's an old pair of socks. Oh, she's seen those before. Okay, they just sound better than an old pair of socks.
I don't know if you know this, but you know what? One thing that's been coming back into vogue, which is like crazy because this is like something that was like in circulation when I was growing up, is now everyone wants the fucking Korg Triton.
You're kidding me. What kind of glue are they sniffing now?
That's what's
that
in
about?
vogue right now.
Oh, we all had Tritons in our studios. Oh, you're
Like
kidding
literally,
me.
it was so standard, and now it's like that is vintage hardware people want.
Oh my gosh! I think it's great though. I think for folks, younger folks who are musicians, and the ones that are building sounds like you and the rest of the more technically inclined composers. I think it's great that comes around. And it happens. If I would have held on to all that stuff, I would have been in my second retirement just selling all that stuff because I just had no idea. I was using it to like prop up desks after a while, or, I'd keep it on to keep my rabbit warm in the cage. I just keep the unit going. Just
that's actually what a blessed bunny.
Yeah, Blessed Bunny is right. Okay, that's the next project, Blessed Bunny. Okay.
That's actually kind of fire. It's like alliterative blessed bunny, and it's a BB for short.
Oh my God! Hey, chat. What do you think? Do you think we should do a song, one track called "Blessed Bunny"? I think that would be hilarious. So, let me see. Let's. I'll tell you what. Let's take a few more. Let's take some questions from the chat, and then after a few questions, we'll lean into what you're currently doing, and because I don't want to drain you too much of time. Obviously, we're pushing a little over an hour here, so I know we're having a blast. But
you know what? You don't need to worry about it. I sometimes stream for like up to 7 hours.
Oh, now you make me feel like shit. Oh no.
No, it's because I lose track of time and I don't sleep anyway. So.
Oh, okay. Well, wait a second. Somebody actually just dropped in. Warboz TV actually had mentioned, I think asked the question earlier, and it just flew by. What was the name of your first drum kit? What was the brand? Do you remember?
Oh shit! Do I remember? Oh man, it wasn't like a really profound one. It was not a super cheap one, but it wasn't an expensive one. Mm-hmm. I don't quite remember. What I can tell you is that in 2011, I started being able to use my dad's drum kit until I left California, and that drum kit was a DW.
Wow, Dad had a kit. Okay, wait a second. So hang on for a second now. You just lit the crack in here. So Dad was a drummer. And now, did Dad play a lot of drums when you were younger, or was that something that he had because when he was younger, before he became a husband and a father and all that, that it kind of just collected dust? What's Dad's story with the drums?
I think that was for. So I'm having a hard time remembering. I think that was like not necessarily because he was a drummer, but more because of just being also a producer. And
wait,
just
what?
Yeah.
Oh, now we're unearthing. We're peeling back the onion here, producer. So, hang on for a second. Now we just keep going to go down that hill, okay? So we're going down that rabbit hole. So, Dad was a producer. What kind of music was he producing at the time?
That's hard to answer because I don't quite remember.
Oh.
His love was rock music, so it was probably very adjacent to that. He's more a guitar player at heart, which makes me a sort of disappointment because I was a piano player instead.
Oh, I see. Okay, good. Okay, well, I like to connect the dots a little bit in the lineage of that kind of, so no wonder, because it's really funny. Your story and my story slightly kind of tied together in the sense that I was raised in a composer family. So when I was a kid, I had access to all these instruments, and it wasn't that they ever pushed me to go towards to become a composer. It was just like, yeah, pick it up and play. Here, go do this. Here, pick it up, do it. Have fun, in between surfing and getting high and whatever. And so it just seems that it seems like we had a similar kind of like, oh yeah, this is what I do, daughter. And there's drums here, and there's this, and there's this. Have fun. I got a little keyboard. We'll knock it out. Go ahead and have a blast. And I kind of like that little vibe there. You had a little bit of the support there from Dad, at least going back that far. So okay, I'm sorry, I digress. So we go back, and now we have a DW drum kit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what it was? Was it like two toms and a floor with cymbals and a snare with the kick, or?
I'm trying my best. I'm trying to picture in my mind. I think we had a single kick drum, 2 pedals.
Ooh.
I think there were 3 toms, 2 raised toms, and 1 large floor tom. 1 snare, and there were a lot of cymbals. We had like I think we had three of them were really large, and there was the hi-hat, of course. On top of one of the large cymbals, there is a small upside-down splash cymbal, and then somewhere else there is a trash cymbal.
Wow.
That's the best I can remember.
That is so cool. So do you think, see, here's part of that, my discursive way of figuring out fun things to ask you. I've realized, without a doubt, early on when Ginger first played one of your tracks, that you're extremely rhythmically creative. You have a very, very keen sense of rhythm and how you assemble your arrangements, being especially your EDM tracks, because there's a lot of little nuanced sequences that are answering callback sequences and stuff. Do you think that having that drum kit first, you think kind of embedded in your whole creative heartbeat, if you would, a strong understanding of rhythm? Even if you weren't able to play like really constructive, incredibly, complicated things, do you think that's like the root of some of your rhythmical approaches?
I think potentially, yeah. I think a lot of it really does have a lot to do with like the music I was listening to, because again, progressive rock music teaches you a lot about time signatures as early on as that's like the first thing they want to do is scare you with that. And complex rhythms and stuff like that. And I think being able to just wham away on the drums with that being my inspiration was definitely very helpful. I don't have room for a drum set in my apartment, so anytime you hear quote unquote live drums, I'm actually playing it on my piano.
Well, you do a hell of a job of engineering,
Thank you.
Of which somebody here also had a circle around to another question, which was this is kind of a broad question. Do you have any advice for up and coming engineers?
Not musicians specifically, but the engineering part.
The engineering aspect, because you do engineer your own stuff, correct?
Yes, that is true.
That's what I'm talking about, because that's pretty damn extraordinary too. If I say my damn self, you do an incredible job with your mixing and stuff.
I think the most important thing with doing mixing and mastering and all that sort of stuff is that there is a reason a lot of tried and true traditional approaches to mixing stuff are so well valued. And I think that if you're going to get into engineering, you should be able to step into a control room and sort of know what you're doing, or at least be able to intuit your way around that stuff. You want to avoid learning off of shortcut devices if you can. But after you know how to do stuff traditionally per se, and quote unquote the right way, unquote, because that really doesn't exist, then I think that's when you should give yourself the permission to start experimenting with the other perspectives. Because I know in electronic music, generally the mixing methods, mastering methods are quite different from what you would find in any other engineering scenario. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens in that space too, and you're going to be finding devices that aren't tried and true because they're weird and new. And having a middle, basically, my advice for most things, but especially with engineering, is learn the rules so you know how to break them effectively.
Very well said.
And don't be intimidated by these devices, because they're not nearly as complex as people make them out to be.
Yeah, I really love the way you said that, because I think one of the things, coming from physically, literally coming from the decade of decadence when I was an engineer, or especially a second engineer at a pretty notorious studio in North Hollywood through the 80s, I think one of the most important things that I could say that I learned was signal flow. And understanding how all of that worked, that, when I first walked in, and remember, we didn't have digital consoles yet when I started. It was all analog and stuff. So of course you walk into a room, you see this board with all these channels, you get a little intimidated, but you just realize it's 48 of the same one channels. But you still have to, the signal flow, the kind of mic that you're using, why are you using the mic, where are you placing that mic, the connection to it. You didn't have to get real super technical when I say signal flow of literally with the wires, but just knowing the mic is going to come through here, goes into the console here. We have preamps that'll do this. Why a preamp here? Why not a preamp here? Why use a DI, box for a bass or not? And all these little things.
Right.
Without a doubt, even though I don't do any mixing anywhere near as complex as work as you do, in my mind, that starting off with that kind of knowledge is such an important part of how I handle my mixing or engineering nowadays. I thought that was a wonderful response to that question. Really quick, while we're on that subject matter, do you have tendency while you're working on your tracks, and once you get a really solid idea down and you're going to move forward with it, do you actually start soft mixing, soft mastering on your stereo bus? In other words, you've got your channels are starting to go, you're starting to feel your mix, you're starting to move things around, and then you'll put like a mastering compression on your stereo bus just to kind of, you're almost like mixing and mastering at the same time while you're still creating?
So, in terms of when I'm writing music, I am mixing while I'm creating the music, but not mastering. My master never has anything on it until the song is done. And that's when I start to do the mastering process, because I need to go in with like a different set of ears for that. I need to switch from being the musician part to being like, okay, that's nice. You mixed this way too loudly. We need to fix this before we can even do the mastering.
Yeah, sure.
The only time I have anything on my master before mastering is if it's like a creative effect, like some sort of thing to glitch things, or like a high pass filter for like transition states.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But mixing is a part of the music I do, I think. The timbre quality, the way things fit together, matter a lot to the music I make stylistically. I don't think I would trust a traditional engineer to execute things the way I would want them, especially because I probably do some things that would make the proverbial engineer tear their hair out.
Yeah, well,
which I'm aware of why it would. But.
Yeah, and that's really funny, because I think a couple days ago I was talking on the stream about the fact that engineers now have become such an intricate part of some of the band process. You know, when you're listening to the more the the heavy metal prog scene and stuff like that, there's so much trickery now that can be done in post, in the mastering, and also in side chaining from each instrument and stuff like that, that I think engineers too have somewhat become part of the creative fabric, you know, for the end deliverable, if you would.
Absolutely.
But for us, you know, you and I cradle and I cradle and I coddle that process myself, because you know, I just have a particular way I want things to be released. Now, albeit though, 90% of the stuff I've ever produced in my life is, unfortunately, it's just something that we all, you know, composers that did the kind of work we did, it's good enough for TV. You know, so we didn't really drill down on a lot of things, because of the fact that all of us know, who are composers for, you know, libraries or certain things, that it's going to get stepped on with sound design and everything else, and it's good enough for TV, and here's what it is. And plus, the kind of unruly kind of expectation that we've got to get it done yesterday. You know, so how much time are we going to put out? So we didn't have the luxury of really having to sit down and mix out and master stuff out. So you get really good at that. I think, as I think back to me asking that question, I'm kind of like with a little confirmation bias. I was like, well, no way. I think I asked that question because I do it. I don't think many people will do that because of how fast I've got to write, how quick I got to mix out. That I'll actually start, like, after I'm 3/4 of the way done with the track and I'm still mixing, I'm going to drop on my, you know, my master compressor, maybe a little bit of a stereo imaging exciter, you know, just to kind of get it going. Like, okay, good, hurry up and do a Paz analyzing on it. Make sure that, you know, if I'm missing any, you know, Beetle fart bass tones that are showing up there, let me roll off the bottom. Let me scoop this and stuff. You know, hit render and, you know, get on to the next track. But that was really interesting to get your perspective on that. Let me see, who else? If we got another question here, stand by. My chats are just having a great time beating me up, is what we're seeing here. And let me see. Well, I think the chat. Actually, Turnip, one of my mods, actually said something really cool, which was, I guess so far how we've been discussing, we've actually hit a lot of questions that people had. So then based on that now, even though I'm all out of any kind of chronological order how I'm doing this. First question is, how many full EP projects have you done to this point?
EP or album or?
Oh, you know what? I've always been on glue when it comes to really, saying that. How many projects have you put out?
That is very difficult to answer that question because it sort of depends on how you define it. Like, I just put out, there was like this iPhone app that was around in the App Store in like 2011 that I made a whole album with in 2011.
On the
I just
app?
decided to release it on the app.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And it was silly, it was funny, and I technically just released that 14 years later for April Fool's Day. So if we rule out stuff like that, the answer is still difficult, and I don't even really keep track of how many quote-unquote projects I've done anymore.
Well, that's funny because
defining this is difficult.
Turnup just did a little homework for us. He said that there's a couple dozen, according to Wikipedia.
Yes, well, I've done at least 20 full-length albums.
Wow, that's insane.
One of them being, how long? Does anyone remember how long Fairy Tales is? Because it's quite long. Hold on, I'm pulling up my iTunes.
Oh my gosh.
Because my album Fairy Tales is really scary for no reason.
They say everyone's saying it's 3 hours long.
Yeah, Fairy Tales is 3 hours long at 40 songs.
Bruh, what got into you?
Prog rock.
Oh, prog rock. So you're all over the place.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Well, that's really funny because this is a perfect time to ask this one question that's just come up, which I don't think you have any free time. But what do you do on your free time when you are not in your creative mode and you actually get to step outside and get some vitamin D or something? What do you do outside of your creative world?
Well, the past year it's been difficult to get vitamin D because I'm so like insomniac, nocturnal creature.
Oh.
So hoping to stop being nocturnal at some point so I could go outside more again. But if we pretend that the past year hasn't been the way it has been, I really just like to hang out with friends. I like to play video games. I very much like to walk around the city because I'm in Portland and there's so much to see. Just like go to record stores, go to the park. Like, I love restaurants. I love food. Big fan of food. I will go get food.
Well, that just sounds like your typical musician. He's doing a bunch of music and then go get food. Music, food, sustenance, create. Sustenance, create.
The problem is I get into modes where I'm basically only working. So this past month, I've basically I wake up, I hang out with my friends for a little bit, work, hang out with my friends a little bit, go to bed. That's been my life for the last month.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, I think, what's wonderful hearing that is I just so remember the kind of energy I had when I was back in the 1900s when I was your age to do that. You wake up and you go and you wake up and you go. And especially when I was a second engineer at this recording studio in the 80s, you're up for 2 or 3 days anyhow because I'm second engineering 2 rooms. While cleaning up puke in the bathroom or something. Second engineers were treated back in the day. But, to have that energy, to be so elated to wake up and you have the tools of your trade in front of you and you write and you do these things. And, I have a huge smile on my face. It kind of brings me back to my young Jedi music days, Somebody asked a really good question, though, here. So you like to play video games. What are your favorite games?
Well, that is a very big video games are a huge inspiration to my music. The soundtracks of video games are so ridiculously important to me, sometimes more than traditional albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, one of the most important soundtracks of my entire life is the Undertale soundtrack.
Ooh, everybody, did you hear that? Undertale? Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is anyone who goes through my discography, if you listen to my music and then pinpoint where I experienced Undertale, the shift is immediate. Everyone can tell.
Really?
So my all-time favorite video game is Undertale /Deltarune. And not only does that influence me musically, creatively, but also just how much I care about characters and story and stuff like that. Undertale, I talk about this a lot, but Undertale fits into this category of art where it's like a super crazy, chaotic, and often silly story with an extremely serious purpose. I love that stuff so much because it ties into that thing I was talking about comedy earlier, where you laugh a bunch and then you're vulnerable to the message of whatever's there. Undertale, Earthbound, games like this are they do this thing I love, that sort of trope.
And so, so Undertale, like you're saying, it's listening to Undertale music is a creative pivot for yourself. What in that same vein of video game music, what is the most abstract of video game music you enjoy? Like what game to what music? Meaning, I don't know. It could be Stardew Valley, or it could be some. What is the one that is the most abstract for you as an influence, video game music wise?
I'm not sure if I can consider like most abstract. Like there's a lot of abstract stuff, but I think a game that has a lot of like an abstract composition style is Eco. The game Eco, which I think that came out in 2001. Same studio that created Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian. That soundtrack is weird, ambient, aleatoric, and focuses a lot more on texture rather than composition. And for a game like that, and the purpose that the soundtrack serves, it's so interesting. I don't even really know how to describe it. It's like if you had a dungeon itself make music, not people making music inspired by dungeons and castles, but if you had the dungeons and castles make the music for you.
That's a trip point of view. That
brilliant game, brilliant soundtrack. I think it's something everyone should experience at least once.
And talking about games, are you kind of up to what's going on right now with this latest release, Clair Obscur? I think it's called, what is it? Exemption 33. Guys, what's the name of that one? Something 33? Are you familiar with this new release? This is crushing it. It's a JRPG. It's turn-based. Are you kind of familiar with what's going on with that?
I don't think so. I haven't really been too much for like turn-based RPG games for the most part. Which is funny because my favorite game is Undertale, which is a turn-based RPG, but
well, I got truth be told, I mean, the only turn-based RPG that I was introduced to was actually Final Fantasy VII Classic. And I was, down for that. But, I just recently this game came out and it's just absolutely crushing, and it's not a AAA. But the music is insane. The music is like Baroque and then chamber choir, and very incredibly well arranged and composed. However, one of my Kados here had me listen to one of the tracks that was kind of a hybrid EDM with a little bit of dirt, a guitar but still keeping the textures of the independent instruments like a violin or a cello or something, still, holding some, maybe a little bit of the leitmotif or something like that. I found it very, very, very interesting. And so, like, as if you don't have enough to do already, and you get an opportunity, you got to check out the orchestral version. It's about a 12-minute listen, but I think it's one of those things where, as a composer, you listen to and you go, God, I forget the power of a Baroque size, kind of
ensemble.
Ensemble. Thank you very much for that, for saving me. But on the other hand, one of the things I notice about your music that I love, that I think might have roots with video games, is you love using a lot of ambient sounds.
Yes.
In your work.
Which is funny because I don't even really listen to that much ambient music.
But it moves you to do so. What is it that you think that pulls you into using a lot of ambient sounds within your compositions?
I think because I get bored if there isn't.
Okay, well there we go.
It's like it's interesting because with other people's music, I don't think that way. I don't think, oh, there isn't enough going on here, so I'm bored. It's sort of just like when I'm making music, if it's not stimulating me in a certain way, I suddenly get really bored and I don't feel like doing it anymore. And having different sound beds, noises, and like ambiances in sections helps to, for me, establish something that carries the musical context into the forward momentum but then also for me, it's like stimulating me, so I'm not like, oh, this is the same thing as like 5 minutes ago.
You know, you sound like you're a little like me. Like for me, the ambient ethereal aspect in composition is like my Jeeves, ADHD stimming. Funny enough, I know, because ambient, I think what it does is it helps me. I'll be writing all kinds of stuff, and I go, God, I wonder what'll happen if I put in a really cool pad, and I'll make it do this, and I'll make it filter, and all of a sudden, it's almost like it's almost like me taking a little bit of an audio chill pill. Mm-hmm. And I think because of the fact that ambient ethereal pads or loop or sequences and stuff just do something to the brain between the two hemispheres.
Yeah.
That kind of takes music on a journey beyond. It kind of adds a little bit of, I don't know, kind of. Help me. How do I finish the sentence? It adds a little bit more of this kind of space to it that just makes the music, even if it's dark. I mean, because you know as well as I do, there is like some gnarly, mellow death music and core music and stuff like that. And now they've got pads going on in the back of them. I'm like, oh, listen to this.
Right.
They're still going. Eat my taco, but in the back you're hearing this beautiful pad. I'm like going, this kicks ass, and it's really funny that's just the little dose of that brings me into the song. That otherwise I might have gone meh, But then as soon as I hear a pad or something like that, I was like, okay, you got me. Take me. Where are we going? Let's go.
I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that there's basically almost never a time where you exist in pure silence. Whenever you're doing anything, even if you're listening to music with the most isolating headphones possible, there is still something happening to your ears that isn't the music elsewhere. The sound of your headphones, the space that you're in, the place that you live. And ambiences sort of feel like the environment you're placing the main content into to simulate this sort of like human experience of like not fully existing in silence, but, with stuff that hums and breathes with you.
I don't even know how to respond to that. That was such a great response because I myself would not have been able to articulate it the way you did. But I think one of the things, not to digress from what you were saying, one of the most important things in my life that got me through my life was being a surfer. I'm still a surfer. I'm in my 60s. I still surf. I live on the beach or close to it. And the white noise.
Yes.
That constant white noise. Even if I'm sitting on the beach, if I'm injured, I can't surf, or if it's too big, or if it's small. Even on small crap days, when I go diving, when I say that, I'm talking like as a surfer. It's double over ankle, and it's not surfable. Just sitting on the beach and just hearing the little waves, just kind of, that constant tone of which you just had mentioned earlier. I could not have connected that any better than how you expressed it. And I think that is really a super great answer on why and how the ethereal ambient use there's this kind of soothing weirdness with it. You hear it. It could be the most bangingest, gnarliest, black metal track. And recently we heard one here. I forgot which one it was. Just thumping, just like Thal style, Beetle fart down tuning. Like I don't even know if there was if that's a drop triple, C somewhere down below. That's why I call it Beetle fart. So that's for the low, or dog whistle for the high. But if there's a little pad back there, it'll help me get through that passage. I'll be like, yeah, that's a little dark, but that pad is sick. So that correlation that I think you put together was very profound.
I think that makes a lot of sense, again, because just thinking about, because you live near the ocean, and so you're always hearing that to some capacity. And even if you're not right by it, the air moves with the ocean if you're super close to it. I'm originally from San Francisco. I lived there for 21 years, and then I moved to Portland, Oregon. And something I didn't realize until I got here was how important the ocean was to my identity and to the way I lived. And you'll notice that because my first project that I did that was fully in Portland and not in California was Cutie Marks. Every album after then, you'll notice that the ambiences get a lot more to be a big part of my music. And with my album Fish Whisperer, which I think you just listened to a Yak song on stream yesterday.
Yes.
Fish Whisperer came from a place of realizing how important the ocean was to me. And I wanted to make an album that felt so deeply like the ocean. And the entire thing is just full of water and ocean sounds in the background, even if you can barely hear them. And Portland is landlocked. That's the thing. We do have a river, we do have lakes, but it's like not near the ocean, which is very different. The ocean is churning, it's salty, it produces so much like mist and life to the outer edges of the land that we live on. And I had the privilege of being able to go back to California for the first time in 5.5 years for that performance last month. And one of the main things I wanted to do was just to go sit by the bay for 30 minutes. And that's it. I just needed that so badly.
That is so magical. I mean, it's funny. I've heard some people here chatting away a little bit going, sounds like it's a long lost daughter of Jeeves. But the thing is that, without drifting too much into the metaphysical world of the power of white noise or pink noise or the ocean especially, for myself as being a surfer, that's my church. I've almost died in the water, because if it's really too big, getting held under, it's just part of the sport. But I also use it, the white water itself and the release of oxygen as waves break and filter through the salt water. It's a mind-numbingly invigorating process, but to connect it to our music, what we do and what we kind of reflect off, and already having that default setting as us being as people who just have to have our sand our feet in the sand at a point, acknowledging what the ocean is to us, I think is paramount and will always reflect in our compositions somehow, some way. I mean, a matter of fact, I have composer friends in Hollywood that were very successful. And I actually had some opportunities that came up in the 90s when I was starting to work on some of the old Saturday morning cartoons back in the days. And I opted out because a friend showed up and goes, come on, let's go to the Mentawais for 3 weeks and let's go surf. Or I was kicked out of a band in junior high school when I was a drummer because I always went surfing. If there was surf up there, forget it. I wasn't going. I've been fired from jobs when I was younger because didn't get back in time from surf. The life choice to be by the ocean actually guided me, or may have hurt my process to become quote unquote a composer, maybe at another level, because I didn't find it to be as important as it was for me to connect with the ocean. So that's unique that we have that. That's a super, super cool beans thing. The project you're working on now,
yes.
Do you have like a working title on it?
It's called Love and Pony Step.
Love and Pony Stuff or Step?
Pony Step. So it's like instead of dubstep, bro step, it's Pony Step.
Pony Step. Okay, wait a second. I got to ask you this really quick because you did say this on the interview, but because I'm old and I can't put it together. The pony influence, the art, everything that you have that I've noticed and all that. What's the genesis of that being a part of your creative journey? Everything that I visually see creatively is, number one, is that you doing the artwork, and number two, what was the influence of that, association between Pony and you?
Well, I do some of my own artwork, but I usually am hiring other artists. I love to celebrate the diverse styles and complexities of different artists, and as much as I'd want to draw stuff too, I find a lot of joy in representing what other people are doing. And originally, it started out as being as a part of the community. So it's like, I love like My Little Pony, the TV show.
That's where it came from. Okay.
I didn't necessarily grow up with it pre-teen. It was sort of something I discovered after, when it was becoming a much more profound pop culture sort of icon situation. I tell the story a lot, but what happened was I went to a Disneyland trip in 2012, and I saw some guy with a Rainbow Dash t-shirt, and I was like, oh, that's a Rainbow Dash t-shirt. And then I was like, why do I know that name? Why did I remember that name? What's going on? Did the advertisements finally get to me? And that like t-shirt stuck with me to the point where on the train ride home, I started going through my like 3G Go phone internet to download like a Rainbow Dash wallpaper. And
That's
at first it was like
hilarious.
kind of on the same vein as Neon Cat type stuff. I was liking it for the similar reasons, and then slowly I Googled stuff and found the show, found there was a whole community behind it. And what sold me was hearing from the show the song This Day Aria, which is just killer. Just I can't believe they're allowed to have that on TV. It's just so fucking good.
Really?
And I joined the community of these pony fans. I don't really consider myself a part of them anymore, especially because I think the community has a lot of issues, if you could believe it. To an outsider, that might sound kind of crazy, but it does have a lot of issues.
No. I know how that whole, you know, every time we break off into these little fan base, or you know, it can be kind of complicated.
There are people who are tempted to associate me with the community because I participated in it for so long. To a degree, I think that's fine, especially if it uplifts the other artists in that community. But for me, it's sort of taken on a life of its own. Like, a lot of this stuff is original characters now, stuff I'm writing purely from, you know, my own mind and my own life and stuff. And really, what it comes down to is art gives us this opportunity to do stuff and to partake in stuff that, like, can't necessarily exist tangibly in a mutual space. And what I mean by that is like, I'm gonna show up in person and I'm not gonna look like the pony on the screen. In my mind, that's different because you perceive things differently, but in a mutual space where we're all looking at each other, it's not gonna look like that. But art gives us this opportunity to paint our reality that way anyway.
Right.
And I love that reality.
Wow, so now, but you've kind of kept the association through your artwork through all these years. Is that just because now that's just become part of your? I don't know. You said you have a few names. You have aliases and stuff. Are you principally known as Violet? I almost said Violent. Violet Pony. I'm sorry.
That's an in joke we have. We sometimes say I'm Violent.
Oh,
Pony.
really? Oh, okay, good. It's just not me. All right, good. I'm not like that Bobo. So is that a carry through brand that you're kind of hanging through?
You know, part of it is because I still love My Little Pony. I adore it to hell and back. I think it's incredible. Even if I'm not a part of the community, because you don't have to be a part of a community to love something. But the other thing is just like, I love the fantastical. I love the colorful. I love, you know, high fantasy. I love creatures.
I think that reflects in your compositions.
No, it's so, I try very hard. I appreciate that you can pick up on that.
Yeah.
There was a time where I was experiencing this shift to where a lot of people who were also into My Little Pony started to shift things to be sort of like, you know, edgy and cool and hip and whatever. And it was like downplaying the colorfulness and the excitingness of like ponies and stuff. And I bought into that for a while, to the point where it was like, you know, making these things more and more subtle, more and more low key, until it's just like, at one point I took Pony out of my name. It was just Vylet. And what I can say is that slowly diminishing that identity into like the smallest possible referential like tangibility was so miserable for me. The less colorful and exciting and pony things were, I was just like, this is some poser shit, man. Like, I don't feel happy. And so I remember just like finally breaking out of that, and like I felt my art and myself and my life like explode into a whole new cascade of intrigue and like fantasy. And like that was when I realized, like, yeah, I can't really go back on this. I love this stuff too much.
I think that's wonderful. I think one of the things that I have said when I heard your music for the first time is I had said, you know, with the amount of creativity that's going on in the arrangements, you know, you just have to imagine, because I kind of write by creating. Sometimes if I'm going in to just write, I will create some visual in my head. You know, like a little. I'm scoring something in my head. What am I seeing in my head? What's happening here? And it transcends into an arrangement and stuff. And I always say, or at least what I had said when I heard one of your music, I goes, just imagine with all these intricate arrangements that are happening here, that there's an image of her music in her head that's going on. It's being pulled from something. It's being pulled from some kind of creative stream of consciousness that is as colorful as it is sonic. You know, do you feel that when you're composing music that you have your own little movie playing in your head that you're scoring to, or, you know, I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm glad I asked the right question. Okay. Good.
I find it very hard to write music without considering a story. Most of my albums are a part of like one cohesive like universe of like characters and like situations. I can't think of. I'm gonna go through really quickly just this. I don't think I've only made one, or honestly like one or two full-length records that weren't based on a full-length story that I had in my head.
So, I mean, it sounds like you write that way. I mean, because to me, when I compose music, of course, it just really kind of depends on it. It's like, how many conversations can I conceivably have without the music sounding like shit? So, you know, what's the cello doing? What's the oboe doing? What's the clarinet doing? What's that section doing? Or in the case of, let's say, EDM, what's this loop doing? How is it answering back to the, you know, what's the bass line doing against the sound design loop that's being programmed here, or the lo-fi thing that's happening there? So how many different conversations can you have at a single time? It kind of reminds me of a very famous scene in the movie Amadeus, that one, where he's getting chastised by, I think, the court composer. And he had gone, you can go to a quartet, quintet, octet, sextet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and continue to have multiple arrangements happening. Whereas if you tried to just get a bunch of people to talk in a room, that many people would sound like noise. That we can actually turn those storylines into the kind of music that we produce. Yours seems very exciting, though. I was going, she's got a lot of things going on up in there. You know, as far as, and I'm not saying that as a dig. I'm just saying that as just like the extraordinary amount of storytelling that you tell in your arrangements to me is one of the things that made me go, fuck, she is busy and she's got stuff going on in her head and she's working it out here and it sounds great.
I really appreciate that. I don't think I've actually heard anyone describe my work with those particular like considerations. I think that's really interesting.
My bad. I'm old. I'm in a cave all day long.
No, I'm pleased to hear it.
So, so based on that, now you're working on a project. How far along are you? Which I know this is kind of like the everlasting gobstopper kind of Willy Wonka question, but how far out are you think, from completing this particular project? Do you set yourself with an end date, or do you just go until you say, okay, I'm done?
Well, it's a bit of everything. I have like loose deadlines because I have projects planned for a long time.
I can imagine.
I have a lot of projects that I want to get to. I'm technically working on 3 or 4 right now. My main one is like Love and Pony Step, but I'm like kind of going between a bunch of different ones and some other work I have to do for other people. But the way it is like, I'm like, if I spend too long in this, I won't be able to get into the next thing. So I have to complete it in a reasonable amount of time. I don't put super hard deadlines on myself usually, but I give myself a reference point for like, okay, I need to be able to get this done around this time so I can get to this next thing. Love and Pony Step will definitely be done before the summer ends. I'm hoping much sooner than that. Hit a few roadblocks along the way, and I got busy with some other stuff, and so progress has been sort of up and down. And the biggest thing with this is usually I'm trying very hard to do stuff completely by myself, and that means that I don't have to wait on anyone. For this record, I've invited a few people to do some like guest moments on this, and so unlike most of my projects, I have to wait on other people, which is like kind of a struggle because I'm a very impatient person.
No, you? I can see you're like, I want it now. I want an Oompa Loompa now.
Which is funny because we do have We do have a Willy Wonka reference in the album.
You're kidding. Okay. I'm playing
There's-
right into
so,
that.
there is this like, I don't know if you're familiar with the term crack ship, but it's like where someone will take two characters from completely extremely removed like franchises and like make them like kiss, make them like ship together and stuff.
Oh, that's
Some time ago,
hilarious.
I saw this like fucking crack ship music video someone sent to Taylor Swift's "We Will Never Get Back to." I forgot the title. We're never getting back together, whatever it is called. And it was with Willy Wonka and Hal from Howl's Moving Castle, and I clicked on it, and it was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, this is really important. Like, it made me really happy for whatever reason. I don't even care very much about Willy Wonka specifically, but it just made me like really happy. It's like, no, I fucking ship. They're both like mad scientist characters type and like hermits that like live in their castle type shit. I think it's kind of cool. And then someone fucking animated a music video for it. So they took the fan-made music video someone else made and then did an animation version of it. And that got me even more excited. And so I was like, I'm going to write a song inspired by this.
Oh, that's
And
fucking
I got the
hilarious.
artist who animated it to do the artwork for this song.
Oh, that's so mental. That is so cool. What's the name of the term? What did you say? Crack ship?
It's a crack ship, yeah. So it's like, oh, what if like I'm trying to think of a good example. What if like Iron Man was like in love with Superman? They're like from two different franchises. That could never happen.
Oh, I see what
That's
you're
not
saying.
happening.
Well, you know, my stream knows, my Kados know me and up-to-date terms. I get myself so much in trouble because stuff that I used to say when I was younger means different things today. Recently, I got my ass hung out, no pun, because I was talking about another composer, and he came up with this particular style of like music and composing. And I went, God, I don't know if I would have pegged him as doing that. Well, I have no idea. Okay, you see, now you're dying. You see, you're fucking dying. But you should have seen what happened on my chat. My chat just got all like bands and stuff. I'm going, what the fuck? What's the problem? And they're laughing. They're going, please don't look it up, old man. We're trying to protect you. Please. I go, and then finally I look it up and I was like, no. Oh my God.
Damn.
But in my days, back in the 1900s, that's like taking a pin and you put it in a map. You know, I wouldn't have pegged that, I said something about cake once and I got ruined. I said something about peach once, I got ruined. I can't. So when you said crack, what is it called? Crack what again?
Crack ship.
Crack
You're
ship.
thinking
Yeah,
of like crack.
Yeah, I'm going to stay way away from that. But thank you for explaining that to me in Morse code because that's all it probably does.
Yeah, no worries.
But you see,
I mean, you don't have to
that.
call it that. You could just call it funny, but you know.
It's hilarious. My whole stream just lost their fucking mind. You should have seen the emotes and the, canceled. What am I canceled for? What did I do? I'm just so. Now I'm going to just shift this, and then just a little more time, and then we'll dip out. But I'm very interested. You are extremely wonderfully creative, well spoken, and I'm sure you have your discursive sides and creative sides and everything like this. The music industry in general is dead, and we know that. And when I say that, we hear this across all the platforms. All these guys saying, "Oh, it's dead." Well, yes, the way it was is dead. You as an independent artist that is also just so wrapped up in writing just so much music and doing so many things, what, notwithstanding having to understand and learn about publishing and writers and how that is still an important part of it, without a doubt, you as a young indie artist that's on the grow, what do you see? What is your process when you see what is the future for artists such as yourselves or young artists in your age range and younger and stuff? What does the music industry look like from you? I hate to say industry because that's just a fucked up term because that seems like assembly line, because that's how the music industry was back in the day. It is very assembly line. It was extremely gate kept. There was a choke around the funnel. The only way you got under radio if you did this or if you got a deal because of this. It's obviously in the last 25 years, the opportunities of social media and putting out music on your own has changed a lot of lives for the better or for the worse. But for you, you've written so much music. You do have your Bandcamp, and you have, your ways of staying in touch with with your fan base. What do you feel, in your kind of Zen way of looking at the future, is going to be the path of young artists such as yourself making a living in this world as a musician, composer, etc.?
That is a very loaded question. It's a very complicated series of answers that I could.
That's okay. I just poured more scotch in my glass, so let's go. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, if you're right, it can be in of itself its own podcast, but if you boiled it down to the ridiculous, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I've seen a lot is mostly the death of traditional labels, which I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with. Like, you don't really need a label anymore to do anything, which I think is a good thing, because you keep more of your money and you don't have to deal with executives and stuff. What I've been noticing more and more is a lot of groups that kind of call themselves labels, but they don't do nearly as much, and it's sort of just like they've become like a tag for like, oh, the music we curate, it sounds like this, or you can expect this level of quality from the stuff that we curate and publish. And that's just sort of what they do. Because I've done CDs myself, I've done distribution myself. I don't really need a label to do that stuff for me. I find that these new quote unquote labels, unquote, are sort of just like communities of like trusted quality and sounds and stuff. And it's becoming so much more optional to partake in them. And I think really independence is becoming easier and easier, but also harder, because services are paying less, and the companies that are doing the distribution, or things like Spotify and stuff, their practices are becoming worse and worse. And now the bottleneck isn't so much labels, that's so much the platforms themselves. And I think that's why we're seeing a much bigger push towards, everyone from every walk of life saying we need to start, focusing a lot more on buying music again, even if it's just digitally. Bandcamp has done a really great job with having its Bandcamp Fridays and stuff, and encouraging people to buy from independent artists and stuff. Yeah. And something that I also say, and this could sound counterintuitive, but I also think piracy is a really important way for music to move forward, because for people who can't buy music, and if we're supposed to avoid streaming, what are they going to do? I think we should be doing more piracy, personally speaking. Yeah. I personally want people to pirate my music if they need it that badly, because art is for everybody. And the more music circulates, that's just a net positive for everyone. The people who can't afford it to buy music, well, they're still getting the music they want to listen to. And the artists are benefiting from, people talking about it, and that music's still getting shared and stuff. And I think the death of labels is important to facilitate a better world of piracy, in my opinion. I think that's really important.
That's a very
I have only seen my community grow as a result of publicly endorsing to hey, if you can't fucking buy my music, do it the old-fashioned way, the good way. Go pirate that shit.
I think that's a wonderfully unique point of view. I fully embrace everything you just said about that. I think one of the unique things about that that is beneficial as well for the artist is if the artist has the ability to do public performances. Because that's the e-ticket ride for being known, and then you're playing in an area and they have your music and they want to come and see you. And I think that component of making money as an artist, any way, shape, or form. I mean, even if you're a slam poet, is to get people to come and enjoy your music in person, the tangible, if you would. Because the actual file itself, because music has become, I was talking about this last year with one of the publishers I used to write for, is that music has become social currency, and it's easily attached to buy a pair of jeans, get 10 free songs, at iTunes or something.
Right.
Or back in the day when Dre was doing the headsets, I had met a friend of mine. He's actually just an old golf buddy of mine that did really well in the industry. A guy named Nino Cuccinello was a very powerful person. I think he's still in with Interscope. But we were talking about how the power of music, the ancillary use of it would be, we can't sell music like we used to. So what we're going to do is we're going to sell these headsets that are going to be packed with all the music, because that's the social currency aspect of it. But we're going to make more money off of the headset sales than we would have individually selling the tracks. Now that the business model decompressed from you had to buy a whole CD or something just to get the one hit song.
Right.
So they found it more of being, like that social currency thing. So I love everything that you just said, even though I'm an old fart and I come from another world. I have to tell you, because of my, personal background, my father was very, very successful in the industry as a string arranger, hundreds of charts for artists and stuff. But what gave me some unique exposure is that when these artists would come to the studio and work with my dad, even though I wasn't really quite into the industry yet, I was privy to a lot of side chat, of what, how labels were treating artists and all this sort of stuff. And I found it to be just so debilitating, why, what, wait, why? But it was the only funnel. It was the only way to make money as an artist or as a singer and so on and so forth. Whereas as the, distilling, if you would, of the possibility of artists making money becoming where it is. Yes, you're right. It's a wonderful thing, but it also does kind of tap the indie artists to have to become a little bit more business-minded on how they want to do what they want to do, attach their logos and brands to merch and stuff that you can sell, albeit Cafe Press is one of the old school ones. I don't know what's new and hip right now. And of course the importance of at least having the knowledge of publishing and writers, which is going to be a thing of the past, not the contractual obligation of having writers and publishing as your joystick for making money, but that only really works when it comes out to licensing, and that licensing transcends YouTube and all these things where you get your little piece of cheese for, like you say, those points of distribution now. I know I kind of skipped, I kind of went, whoa, 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 kind of roller coaster ride through that whole thing. But your response to that sparked hope for me. I mean, in the sense that if artists can kind of get around or be at least in the same vicinity of what you had said, I think we stand, the music industry or the music world stands a chance of still having quite a few years left. To be fruitful for artists, supporting for artists, and that was just really nice to hear you say it that way.
Well, I think more than ever, community is playing a huge role in it because, the internet allows everyone to have a voice and stuff, for better or for worse.
Right.
But because of that, more people are able to commune together, talk about stuff on boards and in servers and stuff. And importantly, you notice this kind of anytime living things come together, but people have developed like codes of ethics when it comes to consuming art and distributing it and supporting people. And the effort for the average consumer to support an artist for the sake of supporting the artist seems to be much more profound than I've known it to be at any other time in my life and probably before. Which is again why I make the point of piracy is it's part of the community. Getting the music circulating is what leads people to support more in the future. I will get emails of people being like, "Hi, 10 years ago I pirated your albums and now I'm buying your whole discography as recompense." Yay. I get these kinds of emails like every other month.
I love
and it's like
that.
This is the code of ethics. This is the whole community working together. People talking about doing the right thing in context of supporting the artists and stuff. You're not going to see this from Spotify. You're going to see this from the community.
Here's the tricky one now. You ready for this, Violet? You ready? Here we go.
Yeah, let's go.
You were talking about, the pirating and all that, and that's a great way to introduce people into the music, and they build a relationship with you, networking and everything. How do you feel about AI?
Fuck Gen AI. That's it.
That
is a here's what I'll say is I remember when Gen AI stuff was really novel at first a few years ago. I remember seeing, I don't know if it was a Vox video or another thing, but it was fascinating to see the technology behind it. And then very quickly I realized how easily it can be abused and that it's so fucking wasteful. All technology is wasteful. All technology is using a lot of energy to do stuff. But the main thing is most of the technology is necessary, first and foremostly. And secondary, it uses less than AI anyway. But let's stop at that point first. AI is not necessary. Everything AI can do, everyone can do without it. And people who are convinced that they need AI to do the stuff for them, all they need is like a year of therapy on their self-confidence. That's it. Anyone can do anything. Anyone can be an artist. Anyone can do this shit. It doesn't, like, AI is not necessary to facilitate that. AI has been around as a generalized technology for so long, but fascinatingly, this new AI shit isn't even really AI. It's sort of just a strange neural network of deep learning stuff, and they're calling it AI specifically to devalue the word AI. They want it to be a buzzword. They want it to be unholy. And this stuff is built off of stolen shit, which is obviously a problem. And the thing is like, I think that, you know, the whole fucking what is the saying? A great artist steals or whatever I forget what the term is. Mm-hmm. But it's like the difference between an artist doing something and an AI doing something is an AI is a black box that you do not understand. And if you yourself are, you know, inspired by something, you can tell people, I was inspired by this. I like this thing. I care about it. With AI, it's just an ether of nothing and everything at the same time. In and of itself, that defeats the purpose of inspiration, that defeats the purpose of any of that stuff. You don't need to consume media to create media with AI, and that kind of isn't art, because art is supposed to be your articulation of the way you experience the world. However that comes. Mm-hmm. But it's so much more wasteful than all of the other technology we're using on a day-to-day basis. I think it was something like every fucking like Google assisted AI search, you basically just dump out a bottle of water each time. Not to say that technology doesn't, you know, have its energy uses, and it's like it's complicated to justify how much we use, but like a lot of the technology we're using now is necessary, though. We need our computers to run our fucking world right now. Stuff like that. We don't need AI to do anything.
That is absolutely mental that you brought up that that association, you know, with the energy that it uses. I think that's a very big kind of veiled part of the conversation, because I was thinking about the kind of energy it takes to make AI pop, you know. And, you know, when you just said that, you just asked Google AI a question or ChatGPT and you just dump out a bottle of water. That is an insane image reference to the wastefulness. I think that's absolute. That was a plus 20 fire damage response. As a matter of fact, when you responded, I think you just said the one word, fuck that, or something. I went, oh shit. I put up the pins and she's going to bowl this shit down. Let me take a quick sip of my whiskey here or something like that. That was really super profound, the way you said it. And I'll bet you there's a bazillion ton of people that would totally agree with you. However, it's going to be a tremendous detriment, I think, to us as a species. But that's, you know, we can get deeper on that as we can go for nuts on that. But
what I would say to that, I am not the biggest Marvel fan. I used to really love Marvel when I was little, and then I sort of grew out of it, out of like their company practices and like their movies just kind of get whatever, and the bastardization of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stuff. But regardless of that, there's a moment in the first Avengers that sticks with me forever, and it's like when Loki is standing above a bunch of kneeling people and declaring that he is a god and that there are no men like me. An old man stands up, looks him directly in the eyes, and says, "There are always men like you."
Ooh.
We have always faced existential threats to art, and we'll come out on top because that's what we like to do.
That's true, and that's the one thing that AI can't change or affect or impact in that capability for us to want to continue to create as a species, as who we are as humans. There's
there's this tendency for these AI bros to try and fool everyone and be like, ha, you just enjoyed an AI image. Now you can't make any excuses. And it's perfectly valid for the person receiving that to say, actually, I don't actually like this anymore now that you've revealed this to me. AI bro goes, okay, but how? You were just tricked into this. And it's like, we as living things are not a set of laws. We're not a set of equations. We have feelings and we can reason. If we find out something new about something that we were tricked about, changing your mind under having more information is the way. Mm-hmm. Because we're not binary. We don't exist in an if-then situation. It's just whatever we want, whatever we feel, whatever we determine. I think people need to hear that more.
Yeah. I mean, we're just in a very unique time of our, existence here as we process and go through this. I mean, but even recently, have you heard that SoundCloud started training AI models on music inside SoundCloud? Did you hear that?
Yeah, we're just... I've been very much considering pulling all my stuff from there, so I hope they're happy about that.
It's just so mind-numbing that these people could sit there and thinking that what they're creating, what they're doing is for the better of life. And truth be told, it's just really super soul-sucking, and I will tell you that the one thing that is unique about the subject we're talking about is I am from the part of the music industry that is the first to truly suffer from AI music. And that is because right now the discussion is, it sounds like so-and-so singing, and that sounds like this song. As soon as this came out, I was talking to another buddy of mine that's kind of high up there in a techie gig space. I went, and I tried Suno for the first time, and then Udio for this first time. The first thing I went was like, oh, fuck. This is it. Yeah. Any internet or radio station now can prompt Suno to write me a 30-second spot that's hip-hop with a donut, which means a little space in the middle. And now instead of licensing music from music libraries that have been composed by people, all these music library companies now are starting to shift their assets and going, we need to sell off our catalog. Because now that intern at the radio station, that intern at the TV station that isn't too worried about an ASCAP or SOCAN or BMI kind of catching can go ahead and produce these little bits and pieces without having to use any library music anymore that we've had licensed agreements to. Now ABC, CBS, NBC, some of those stations, they're going to be a little slower to move on that because they just don't want to get dicked around when it comes to lawsuits. We don't know if Suno and Udio now are going to have, DRMs, very unique DRMs in order to identify a track that was done on Udio or Suno that they're using behind, the latest Coca-Cola commercial or something like that. But we're done.
Right.
But as far as the smaller, well, there's no such thing as smaller music libraries in the capacity of which I've worked. We're talking about the killer tracks. We're talking about all these major companies. People are, they're not quite toasted because they have big enough fingers that major companies will use them because, of course, they have also got incredible quality music. But the guys like that I've worked for that are the mid-range libraries, everyone's shitting in their pants, and I don't even get phone calls there, which is okay. I have to say I dodged the bullet. Being at the age that I am and the thousands of tracks that I've written from libraries since the early 90s, I have enough saturation in a lot of libraries that are still housed within promotion units or editing units at those major networks that they'll still drop in. All of a sudden I'll look at my royalties. I go, how the hell did my shit end up on the Kardashians? But but truly, I mean, just to kind of put a little end cap to the discussion, I am the first of professionals in the music industry to truly say I've lost my work because of AI, because of that aspect of it. It's no longer music that's being licensed out. These intern people can just go ahead and do their minutes and 30s, and it's over. And nobody can track it, trace it. They don't have a trackable or traceable software on it, so they're just getting away with it and they're doing it. So, fortunately I'm at the age now where I can enjoy doing the streams that I do and what I do on YouTube, and now as I'm getting older, I'm doing work for nonprofits and stuff and so on and so forth. But, I kind of going, wow, I'm the first casualty, or my profession in the music industry is of the first casualty of of AI, and I just have to go. For me, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a bummer because, like I said, I'm on with my years. I'm just waiting to punt. I say that in a good way. When I say I'm waiting to die, it's not like an ugly thing. It's like I've had a lot I've accomplished and things that I've done. But for the younger composers who are wanting to get into that industry, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to be that guy to tell them. But everybody's going to have to figure out the stuff for themselves. But it's the reality of what AI has done to creative people. That's just...
Well, I really do lament that for and with you, because like even if you said that, like, you're sort of done with that part of your life anyway, it's like still it feels like a recontextualization of a lot of memories you have though, and feeling a lot of that stuff shift around. And so regardless, I think there's a lot to be said for how that can still emotionally affect you, and I do lament that with you.
That was nice of you. That was very nice of you. That kin-like moment there. I don't know. The interview just flipped on its head now. Now I feel like, how much time do I have left on the clock, Dr. Vylet?
Well, what I will say about the future of that stuff, though, is we've already been seeing a huge community pushback. And that's where things start. And it feels like an impossible monster of a thing. But I think there are a few points I want to touch on. I know we've gone pretty long already, but like I feel very compelled to at least speak on these things conclusively. That one, I think that right now we're in a phase where it's so novel that people are just buying into it right now, and they're not ready for the fallout. And I mean that in a positive way for every normal, reasonable person. Because
right.
I think we've had so many stories of something coming about where it has this existential threat to stuff that we know, and then it turns out that it's not as formidable as everyone thought it was. The Roman Empire type shit.
Yeah, you're right.
And people are going to slowly realize that because AI is going to get extremely accurate to the point of being like really close to what human beings can do. We need to like get that out the gate, that's going to happen. AI is going to leave its uncanny phase. That's a promise. So we need to not be focusing on propagating and or arguing the points of like, oh, well, this just looks like shit, it sounds like shit, etc., because it's going to get better. So let's leave that in the dust. The main thing is that, thankfully, the people who feel the need to use AI to do this sort of replacement for like actual artists, they don't have ideas. You have to remember, again, this point I keep making of conceptualization versus execution. AI is purely execution. None of these people are going to be like passionate enough, caring enough, or interested enough to actually have good ideas. That's why it's so funny about AI is every single AI person seems to want the exact same thing because they aren't really trying to be artists.
Right.
By default, as novel and as crazy as this technology seems, people are going to get sick of it.
Yeah.
Because these people aren't going to come up with new ideas. The other thing is, right now we're in a wild west where there isn't regulation. There's going to be regulation. Because that's just what governments have liked to do since the dawn of time to things we care about too. But in this case, it's a copyright nightmare. It's a morality nightmare. Fucking what was it? The new Pope talked about AI. Was it Pope Leo?
Oh my God! Right? What was it? Would you ever think that would be in the vernacular of a pompous popey, a popey pomp, whatever?
I'm here. I appreciate it.
It's amazing.
But this stuff is going to seem formidable and super powerful and unkillable. But the thing is at the end of the day, what I don't think is ever going to change is that the people executing these things are kind of just stupid and don't know what they want and don't know how to like do anything new. And the other thing is that people are going to get smarter. People are going to start caring more. Because that's what happens with stuff like this, existential threats to the things we know. And things will catch up in time, and we're just in the Wild West right now.
Yeah, that's exactly where we are. It is the Wild West, and I recently had a friend over. He's a very successful post-production producer in Hollywood. You know, Amazon, Netflix, all kinds of stuff. And he was here for a month, chilling out with me because he had nothing to do. Because everything that's also happening. One of the very unique things about the music industry, if you really look about the disintegration of the music industry, we are unfortunately the trendsetters of doom in the fact that it seems like technology attacks us first and also both, not necessarily attacks. Some of them as advances, like the barrier to entrance into being a producer and a writer and a songwriter really dropped low. When under $2,500 you can get yourself going as a studio. That's not a bad thing. That's great to open the doors, open that floodgate to more people being able to produce and stuff. But as that started churning its own butter, the technology in of itself was now to the point where we are in distributions and stuff, that all these different streams of income are pulling more from the artists than they are going for the artists. Well, that actually now is what is happening finally to Hollywood. From what he's telling me is the fact that these incredible changes, especially based on AI, it's one thing that when YouTube came out, the cameras got a little more interesting, prosumer things were being released, content's being produced on YouTube. The only having to do it at Hollywood model started to disintegrate to now. Excuse me. He sent me a link of a company that just did a 2.5-minute trailer for a movie strictly on AI, and I swear to God, Vylet, no matter how hard I looked, and I'm looking for artifacts or weird little horror produced things on images, I'm like going,
Yeah.
oh shit, this is phenomenal. And the thing is, is that what I've learned about our industry, and this was something that was a conversation way back in the day, was, you know, the advancement from analog to digital consoles to, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on making records and stuff like that, when the consumer itself, let's speed it up to like in the 2000s, is listening to the music on a low-grade MP3 coming through a $25 pair of earbuds or,
right.
Headphones. At the end of the day, what's really scary about what we have to stand up for is that the consumer doesn't know our pains, if you would, of what we're going through. They're just getting what they want. This is what they listen to. If the quality may not be as cherry or something, I'm sorry, cherry, that's an old man use, but as it was before, they're kind of okay with it. So as long as the consumer is kind of okay with what what the powers to be are producing, we're the ones that have to keep, lugging up that really super anchor line and going, just pull, everybody pull. We got to get this, we got to get this shit moving. It's just a very unique challenge that we have as creators and artists, at least in the music industry, and also now, with Hollywood and all that sort of stuff, to kind of absorb the fact that, in general, the public just wants what they want. They don't really care how they're going to get it, and they may support us as a community, all arts through and through, but that's the scary thing about what AI does, is that though we may complain about it and we go to Washington and we do the things that we do and we stand up for it, at the end of the day, the flow is going to go where the money's going to go. They're going to go, hey, sorry, poor musicians, we just don't need a composer for this next film, because now the audience at large is okay with hearing an AI styled EDM, rock, metal, whatever it is that they can conjure up, and they don't know the better. And, so that's, what we stand up for, to, continue to try to push and be, those kind of representatives and standing up for ourselves as artists. It's important, but it is a scary thing.
Well, I think that consumers have always been blasé towards everything, and everyone, I feel like people outside of a lot of these artistic communities have already observed for decades longer that the average consumer is, blasé to things that we care about. And it's like the kinds of people who are employing these kinds of technologies are really large companies that really just rely on their large user base. I think people who really care about art are going to see this play. And I feel like those are the people we should be placating to begin with, which does make it harder to do stuff like generalized industry work, admittedly. Yeah. But I think also we see this trend of a lot of different technology happening where people will become very comfortable with it, and then there's a renaissance to move against it.
Yeah.
And this is common with things that aren't as existentially threatening as AI. I'm going to use this as an example, not because electronic music is a negative thing, but during the 90s and the early 2000s, electronic music was really starting to capture a lot of like the radio is capturing a lot of like people's interest. It was becoming less of a niche thing, and it was becoming more mainstream. And it really apexed in the early 2010s with how really overproduced and crazy that pop music and a lot of the top stuff in like films and shows were being as well. And then all of a sudden you realize that there's a huge push in a lot of these communities to do stuff that's more acoustic. There were a lot of bands and artists that started to do a lot of acoustically focused music because people were getting really, jaded from how electronic things were sounding. And trust me, as someone who loves electronic music and stuff, it's like, this is just something that's been observed, and this is something that's just reasonable. With AI shit, it's again a black box of stuff that all sounds the same, and people are going to be fine with it now. The average consumer will probably be fine with it always, but a good percentage of those people who are comfortable with it now are not going to be that way in the future, and we know this from how often this sort of cycle happens.
That is very that is very well said, in the sense that I too believe that this onslaught of AI that we're experiencing now with, the image generating and all that sort of stuff, we are going to get tired of that shit and just be like, okay, that was really fun. Next, let's get some people playing music. Thank you. I'll pay $20 to see that, or I want to hear that, or I want to be reconnected to, humanity through, listening to an artist and communicating with that artist and stuff like that. Of course, everyone's like, well, how do you know this is really an artist? It could be AI. Yeah, no, I'm sure we're going to be able to detect that, and we're going to be really sick of that fast. But this is the new chocolate or piece of candy in the Forrest Gump chocolate box. You never know what you're going to get. But at the end of the day, you put the cap back on, you walk away, and you move on to a whole different thing, because after a while, it's like, so that was very well said.
Well, the one thing we can count on is companies flying on trends and then giving up on them.
Yeah. No, that's true. Well, like I said,
this is more lucrative than the average trend, but it is a trend nonetheless.
Yeah, but the thing is they do jump the trend. And I said, last week at the end of a bit of music that I listened to, I said about the gaming industry, the fact that they're like, oh my God, look at what Claire Obscura has done in such a small amount of money that was spent compared to a AAA development kind of a game. And, they've sold like 2.5 million units within the last 3 weeks at $50 a unit. It's turning the industry on its ear and stuff like that. But at the end of that particular music that I was listening to, I had said that, one of the things is that the trending out of it where people get exhausted of the same shit is because the Hollywood way or the larger corporation way is they don't really know creativity. They only know that this is the hot dog. This hot dog is what we need to sell the next thing. But let's put a little something different on top of the hot dog. It's they only know what they can trend off of until they just drop it and then just go until somebody shocks you in a different way, in a different direction, and it gives the trend the people's elbow, and so. But we went long on that AI stuff, but
well, it is really important and really topical.
It is, and actually, you're going to die laughing. I was sitting there worrying about us going too long. We're pushing 3 hours here. Can you imagine? Jesus.
No, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, and I have to end this because my AI bot is telling me on my phone. No, I'm kidding. I'm just. My AI agent is going, you have to take your cholesterol medicine. You have to take your heart rate. No, I'm kidding. But it's coming around the corner. But, I do have to dig out myself. I thought you'd be the one to get really bored of listening to me talk. But I am so excited I had this opportunity to talk with you. And I wouldn't be opposed to maybe sometime in the future we, pickleball some more fun, conversation. Would you be open to that?
I would totally be opening to. My bad. Speaking grammar, language is invented. It's difficult. I would totally be open to that. My schedule gets pretty crazy, and right now I'm definitely full swing on completing the current project lineup I have, but sometime in the future I would definitely be open to that because it was a pleasure to be.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed your just everything that you're about. To me was just such an eye-opening and such a wonderful couple of hours to spend here with you. Before we dig out, I know that a lot of our people here on the chat know where you're at, on Twitch and so on and so forth. Is there any one place on all the little platforms that you are distributed on that would be the place for us to hang out and keep an eye on what's coming forward from you?
The best place is always like YouTube. I would say Twitter, but Twitter's a hellhole, so don't go there.
Oh my God! It's turned into such a douchebaggery there. I can't even I can't even open it anymore. It's just disgusting.
But YouTube is like where I put a lot of like my. Well, YouTube and I guess Bandcamp, because Bandcamp is where all the releases are kept. YouTube, I kind of delay releases that are finished because I want to like have a consistent upload schedule and stuff. But like. In general, I'm putting out a lot of the stuff I want to share on YouTube, including just like the stupid, funny things I do as well that isn't just music.
Yeah, well, that's what's keeping the community together. I mean, even us doing this podcast and stuff, I'm going to chop it up and edit it a little bit and pop it out there. Up there on the chat, guys, Turnip just popped Violet Pony's YouTube channel, so go click on that and join her and subscribe and hang out. To everybody on the chat, thank you guys so much for coming in. Violet, hang out with me for a second. I'm just going to end the chat, and then you and I can aloha each other before we dig off and go on our creative ways.
Yeah, nice what?
Thank you guys so much. Ginger, thank you so much for this introduction. I had an absolutely wonderful, enlightening time, talking to Violet, so thank you. And to everybody else, like you guys know, I'm going headlong into some nonprofit work, and so it might be about a week or 10 days before I get back into my usual Happy Aloha Friday Twitch stream, but I am coming back. And so, Ginger, thank you so much for spending this kind of quality time with me, with us, with your friends that you invited over to, because you are really busy. And you're doing a lot of things, and so I feel that was a very precious couple of hours that you broke off for us, and I can't tell you how humbled I am by that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I felt like I don't hear a lot of the perspectives you've been giving from a lot of my general audience and like the people I speak to, because it's just like a completely different world I'm learning from, and it's something I value a lot.
Oh, well, thank you so much. That's what happens when you get old enough to have to wear Depends all the time. Anyhow, it's the wisdom of life that we spun. Anyhow, so hang out with me for a second. I'm going to say I'm going to end our stream. Guys on the stream, you guys take care of yourself. Thank you very much. I did have quite a few folks that followed as well in the last couple of hours. I want to thank all of you if you're still hanging out, and come back and check me out whenever I'm doing my stupid old man music listening stuff. So you guys take care. I'm going to end the stream right now. So aloha. See you guys.